Chapter 1705, The Collapse of Quat-Quate, Part 1. The white light continued to flash as more battleships emerged from hyperspace, arriving at the outskirts of Anaji's planet. The first wave of arriving ships included some large vessels, such as Higara-class battlecruisers, Generosity-class communications frigates, Cole-class battlecruisers, and Defiant-class light destroyers. Though the initial number was modest, totaling about 30 ships, it was notable that 16 of them were Jaeger-class battlecruisers. Soon, more warships began to flood the battlefield, predominantly small and medium-sized vessels. Most of these frigates and destroyers were under 100 meters in length, but their numbers were overwhelming, exceeding 1,000 ships. This new force charged forward ferociously, like a pack of wild beasts, aiming to encircle and crush the last remnants of the Galactic Republic Expeditionary Force. The fierce battle on Dawn Planet concluded swiftly. The Republic's expedition fleet, having lost coordination, was overwhelmed by a massive sea of frigates. During the battle, the combined fleet of the Principality of Dawn included a significant number of rescue ships. Despite their name, these ships were designed to capture enemy warships, a technology derived from Homeland. Several Jaeger-class battlecruisers, after their shields were breached, were attached to these rescue ships. The central control computers were hacked, life support systems shut down, and the crew members eliminated. These captured ships became the spoils of the Dawn Principality. Cassio Tag's flagship, the Tag, was no exception. The commander-class dreadnought, despite its massive size, had low combat effectiveness and was easily captured by a rescue ship. Once the spacecraft was taken over, the commander-class hatch was opened, and a large number of combat robots boarded the ship. Under the assault of B-2 super battle droids and destroyer droids, the commander-class ship quickly fell. Cassio Tag, along with a group of officers, made a last stand on the bridge, taking up arms to resist. However, they were swiftly overpowered by the B-2 super battle droids. Cassio Tag was captured and taken prisoner. After the Tag was seized, some Jaeger-class battlecruiser pilots, seeing the hopeless situation, chose to surrender. Following a brief reorganization, these battleships turned into the vanguard of the Republic fleet's counterattack around the planet Anaji. "Blow me up! Blow me up!" Cassio Tag, now tied up on the bridge of the battleship as a hostage, muttered to himself. His once proud flagship, the Tag, had been taken over by robots and was now being used as a human shield at the front lines. Despite this, Cassio Tag refused to surrender. He could accept defeat, but he would never relinquish his honor as a soldier. He preferred to die on the battlefield rather than live as a coward who surrendered. Moreover, after such a humiliating defeat, returning to Coruscant as the commander-in-chief would bring unbearable shame. For the Tag family, his death would at least provide some explanation to the Parliament. Tang Xiao, however, had no interest in Cassio Tag's life or death. As a high-ranking officer, capturing him alive was more valuable than his corpse. Thus, he left the matter to Dryden Voss, who decided to use Cassio Tag to publicly persuade the remaining forces to surrender. When the persuasion failed, Tag was tied to the bridge and used as a human shield. Laszlo Dolit, sensing Cassio Tag's determination to die, ignored the calls for surrender and led his fleet in a final, desperate resistance. "Bomb the planet Anaji with all your strength. I don't care about the consequences." Laszlo Dolit roared with all his might. "Believe they can create a brand new planetary shield. Blow it up! Blow it up! This is our last honor as soldiers. We must not die empty-handed. Even if we are defeated, the entire Anaji planet must be brought down with us." On the other side of the battlefield, the governor of the model sector, Volgograd Kennedy, said with a ferocious expression, "Assault! The whole army attacks. Even if your warships can still fly, use them to sink the warships of the Republic. This is our home. Those invaders who destroyed our families will pay with blood. Kill them. No one will be spared who refuses to surrender." Dryden Voss, having failed to persuade the enemy to surrender, felt humiliated. His heart was now filled with murderous intent. On this battlefield, almost everyone had descended into final madness. Meanwhile, at the far end of the Milky Way in the Dawn Galaxy, the Kuat defenders were also in a frenzy. The hyperstabilizer had been blown up a few days ago. Such an event was simply unbelievable, yet it had happened right before their eyes. The intruders had hacked into their command center computers, interfered with their communications, paralyzed their electronic equipment, and plunged the entire Dawn Galaxy military base into chaos. Despite this, they still maintained a significant garrison around the hyperspace stabilizer. The systems surrounding the hyperspace stabilizer were independent and had not been invaded or destroyed. In fact, if they had remained calm, properly isolated the compromised parts of the base, and started investigating bit by bit, they could have stabilized the situation. However, their top commanders, Onana Court and Leela Blissex, saw the situation deteriorating and fled. Before Onana Court escaped, she temporarily appointed a security captain as the commander of the defense forces. This unreasonable and absurd appointment only added to the chaos. Each unit was now fighting on its own, blindly following false instructions without proper investigation. The corporate culture of Kuat Power Shipyard was strict and hierarchical. Every individual was treated as just another cog in the machine. It was no surprise that no one questioned the false orders, as those who dared to question their superiors would not last long at Kuat Power Shipyard. This situation would never occur at Rendili Interstellar Power Company, where questioning orders was common due to its structure as a large alliance of shipyard bosses. The debate over whether different systems are a blessing or a curse cannot be generalized. It is surprising that even at this point in the plot, some believe Tang Xiao should not hit the Galactic Republic too hard. If this were the case, wouldn't Palpatine and the Galactic Empire be even more ruthless in the future? It is baffling to think that some would worry about inflicting too much pain on the enemy when a much more powerful adversary is attacking. Do they believe someone like Palpatine wouldn't use extreme measures regardless? This line of thinking is more outrageous than anything Wang Jingwei could have conceived. Chapter 1706, The Collapse of Kuate's Kuwait, Part 2. Under the chaos, the entire command system of Dawn Galaxy gradually collapsed. Although there were only a few invaders, by the end, the defenders of Dawn Galaxy could no longer distinguish between friendly forces and invaders. James Bond once again blended into another guard force. After several twists and turns, he found himself near the hyperspace stabilizer department. Meanwhile, the two Protoss Dark Templars, Aura Khan and Sora A, continued to cause chaos and kill indiscriminately. Nova and Gabriel Tosh followed James Bond, and with his support, they also reached the core department. What happened next was almost inevitable. James Bond found a way to get close to an officer with high enough status, and then Nova took him hostage. Using the officer's authority, they implanted a virus into the core department's mainframe. This allowed Super Lotus to hack into the core department's system. She restarted the energy supply devices around the star and continued to charge the hyperspace stabilizer until it exceeded its energy limit. The resulting devastating explosion turned the hyperspace stabilizer, which Kuat Power Shipyard had spent a fortune to build, into a pile of scrap metal. Later, Super Lotus learned from communications that the fleet of the Galactic Republic was about to enter the Dawn Galaxy and take over all management. She had an idea and released a false message through the core system. She claimed that because the hyperspace stabilizer was destroyed, the stars in the Dawn Galaxy were about to enter an unstable state and a supernova could explode at any time. Therefore, she required all defenders and staff in the Dawn Galaxy to evacuate within 3 days. As soon as this news broke, Dawn Galaxy erupted into chaos. Although most people did not believe this outrageous news and knew that someone was spreading false information, some still blindly followed and prepared to leave. Not all of those who wanted to leave had spaceships, leading to disputes over the available ships and making the already chaotic base even more chaotic. Taking advantage of this riot, the 6-man team that successfully completed the mission left the Dawn Galaxy aboard a spaceship from the Kuat Power Shipyard. The day after they left, a large number of Galactic Republic warships arrived in the Dawn Galaxy. Countless heavily armed clone soldiers began to land on every space station in the galaxy, taking control of everyone. The person commanding this Republic fleet was none other than the governor of the Ninth Army, Dun Wessex. The first thing the Republic fleet did upon arrival was to completely shut down the original command system of the Kuat Power Dockyard and instead use the military command system that came with their battleships to eliminate the computer virus left by Super Lotus. At the same time, everyone was carefully questioned and investigated, and all space stations were thoroughly searched. In just one day, the Galactic Republic military took complete control of the situation, showing extremely high efficiency, which was a stark contrast to the corporate management of the Kuat Power Shipyard, which was full of loopholes. However, the military personnel of the Republic were infuriated to discover that the invaders who had turned the entire Dawn Galaxy upside down were no longer there. When Dun Wessex received the news, he felt like his head was about to explode. He immediately scolded every senior executive of the Kuat Power Dockyard in front of him, using every dirty word he had ever heard. Then he tried to connect to Onana Kuat's communication, but the top leader of Kuat Power Shipyard buried his head like an ostrich and refused to answer any communication at all. Instead, it was Lila Blissex who responded. Facing his sweetheart, Dun Wessex immediately softened. He comforted Lila with gentle words, assuring her that this had nothing to do with her and that he had made all necessary preparations. He blamed the humiliating failure entirely on Onana Court and Cassio. Tag. The two also discussed how to leverage this incident to extract more benefits from Kuat Power Shipyard. Dun Wessex had already written off Onana Court as a dead person. Onana Court, meanwhile, was in a state of despair. She clutched her head, her once silky, well-maintained gray hair now a greasy, tangled mess. Her face was pale, and she looked 10 years older, resembling an old woman. Although she had fled from the Dawn Galaxy, she was still closely monitoring the combat operation, as it was crucial to her future. However, the lack of news was disheartening. For 2 full days, there had been no communication from the model star sector. The complete loss of contact with such a large fleet was terrifying to contemplate. The chaos in the Dawn Galaxy was one thing, but the outcome of the war in the model sector was critical. If the battle was confirmed to have failed, it would spell disaster for her, as she had been a major proponent of the operation. An attendant approached her respectfully and said, "Dear Quat of Quat, just an hour ago, Dun Wessex led the fleet to take over the Dawn Galaxy. He has been trying to contact you. Should I?" Onana Court did not respond. She sat there, holding her head in silence. The attendant waited for a moment, then respectfully withdrew. Onana Court was consumed with thoughts of how to deflect the blame for the failure. She considered pinning it on Lila Blissex, but Lila had Dun Wessex's support. Dun's immediate takeover of the Dawn Galaxy was a clear move to back Lila. What about Dun Wessex? He had also been involved in promoting the model sector raid. But his ability to lead a fleet and take over the Dawn Galaxy indicated that his status with the Speaker remained unchanged. Cassio Tag was already a confirmed scapegoat, but that was not enough. The model sector raid had involved over 400 battleships and more than 3 million clone soldiers. Over 300 battleships and about half of the army had been sent to the model sector, and none had returned. Cassio Tag, who had been just a major before the battle, could not possibly bear the full responsibility for such a colossal failure. In the end, Onana Court realized that the blame might fall solely on her. She grabbed her hair in frustration, tears streaming down her face. Was it all over? Could anyone save her? Chapter 1707, Yagodal Counterattack 1. After Onana Court's attendants left the room, they did not go about their own business. Instead, they gathered together and whispered among themselves. Some even took out their personal terminals to show everyone something. Soon, when they looked back at Onana Court's room, their expressions turned contemptuous. After a moment, these attendants turned and left, unceremoniously driving away Onana Court's luxurious shuttle. Before they left, they didn't forget to turn off the lights. That's right. Kuat's energy and Kuat's lamps would not light up for an outsider. There was a deathly silence all around, leaving only the trembling Onana Court facing the darkness and fear alone. The next day, at the command center of the Dawn Galaxy, a shuttle spray-painted with the logo of Kuat Power Shipyard flew into the spaceport. It was Onana Court's vehicle. The hatch opened, and Little Court walked out with Kuat Planet Counselor Gideon Danu and several top officials from Kuat Power Shipyard. Those officials personally held several packages wrapped in red ribbons containing data storage devices. There is no doubt that if you were to measure the contents of these data memories in credit points, the long string of zeros at the end would blind you. Without stopping, they went directly to the core of the command center to meet the man who could save the Kuat Power Dockyard, Dun Wessex. At this moment, he was sitting on the sofa at the top of the command center, with his legs crossed, as if he were the king of the world. Indeed, if you were to calculate the power in the hands of Dun Wessex, ruling the world would not just be talk. Lila Blissex, on the other hand, stood behind him obediently like a little bird, putting away her usual arrogance and intrigues and playing her role with peace of mind. This role could keep her alive. Luckily, Dun Wessex remained smitten with her performance. Little Court brought his entourage of senior officials to Dun Wessex and respectfully presented his gift. Then they screened everyone away, leaving only Court, Dun, and Lila, who talked in secret for several hours. Later, when Little Court left with his people empty-handed, there was already a slight smile on his face, full of feminine temperament. Although the raid in the model sector was extremely bloody and brutal, it did not last long. Soon, when news of the battle's failure spread to another battlefield through secret channels, the face of Gideon Tarkin, commander of the Galactic Republic fleet, was full of solemnity. He knew that there was not much time left for him. The specific results of the Battle of the Model Sector were not yet clear, and they did not know how much the Kingdom of Dawn suffered in this battle. The only thing that could be determined for sure was that the Galactic Republic and Kuat Power Shipyard sent more than 300 capital ships to the model sector during this battle, as well as more than 1.5 million clone soldiers and supplies worth billions. It's basically certain that they wouldn't get a dime back. But how much they lost is not the key. The biggest key is how much of the Dawn Principality is left. Once this calculation is wrong, it may mean disaster for the battlefield he is on, because he has no idea how many troops were liberated from the battlefield in the model sector of the Principality of Dawn. But if they just retreat like this, Gideon Tarkin also knows that this is impossible to be accepted by the Republic military and even Speaker Sheev Palpatine. It can be said that the Galactic Republic used all its strength to attack the Principality of Dawn this time, and then suffered a disastrous defeat in the model sector. Don't tell me that the lost battleships were all from Kuat Power Dockyard. To put it bluntly, weren't they also from the Galactic Republic? It's just that because Kuat Power Shipyard was involved, the use of those warships was not calculated into the Republic's already deficit military expenditure. In the future, if we continue to order warships, must the delivery volume from Kuat Dynamic Shipyard be reduced? What is the power of the Galactic Republic if this is not a loss? Under such circumstances, if the Yago-Dur system fails to achieve even an inch of progress, it would be a devastating blow to the reputation of the Galactic Republic. As the battle in the Yago-Dur system has developed, Gideon Tarkin is increasingly reluctant to continue the fight. His fleet recently suffered a defeat, primarily due to the Archon-class aircraft carrier among the defenders of the Principality of Dawn. The terrifying swarm drones can even ignore the electromagnetic storms generated by stellar flares and fight in extreme astronomical environments. Coupled with their extremely powerful combat effectiveness, the Republic fleet, temporarily without fighter cover, was defeated and had to retreat to its frontline base, built with the remaining 4 shield ships, to regroup. Although Gideon Tarkin's fleet still holds the upper hand, he is entirely different from the new recruit, Cassio Targ. His step-by-step strategy, tailored for this tough battle in the Yago-Dur system, is still in effect. The Republic fleet currently in the Yago-Dur system, having experienced the previous great defeat, has since been supplemented. There are still about 70 capital ships and 150 small and medium-sized warships. Among them are 13 Knight-class Star Destroyers, 60 Jaeger-class battlecruisers, 1 Commander 2-class Dreadnought, 64 Aquidens-class light cruisers, 15 Carrack-class light cruisers, DP-20 gunboats, and more than 70 frigate-class battleships. Most of the reinforcements are small and medium-sized battleships, and the backbone of the fleet, the Knight-class Star Destroyer, has not been supplemented after losing 6 ships in the last failure. However, the only thing that makes Gideon Tarkin extremely gratified is that the prototypes of 10 Vindicator-class heavy cruisers provided by Cena Fleet Systems are now on the way. The current situation of these prototype ships is not very stable. They will stay at the forward base near the Yago Dur system, waiting for engineers from Cena Fleet Systems to conduct final debugging work on these warships before they can be deployed into the battlefield. This should take about 3 to 5 days. Moreover, the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser is a warship with an enhanced fire control system and point defense system, placing great importance on the battleship's air defense capabilities. The addition of these warships should enable his fleet to better deal with the threat of swarm drones. Chapter 1708, Yagodol Counterattack 2. Although it broke out almost simultaneously, the Battle of the Yago Dur system exhibited a completely different style from the Battle of the Model Sector. The battle in the Model Sector was classified as a surprise attack by the Supreme Strategic Command of the Republic. Their plan was to launch an aggressive assault from the beginning, quickly establish an advance base, and then press the army to attack Dawn Planet in one decisive move. Consequently, this battle was characterized as a strategic, decisive battle, with a massive force of 400 battleships directly invested, highlighting the Supreme Strategic Command's significant focus on Dawn Planet. In reality, the Supreme Strategic Command of the Republic would never have agreed to such a risky venture if someone hadn't financed it and someone else hadn't taken the blame. Even with a massive force of 400 capital ships, attacking Dawn Planet was still considered a gamble by the Supreme Strategic Command. Dawn Planet had already proven its strength in numerous battles, and 400 battleships were not enough to defeat such a formidable opponent. The military experts at the Supreme Strategic Command were well aware of this. So why did they agree to this plan? This brings us to the bureaucracy of the Galactic Republic and the work style of officials at all levels. The primary prerequisite for them to take action is to avoid trouble and responsibility. To put it bluntly, if you want them to do something, you must first discuss the benefits. If they receive enough benefits, they might agree to do it. However, the condition is that someone else must take the lead and bear the responsibility. If a superior official endorses it, then no problem. They will support it wholeheartedly. But if you want them to take the lead, that's a different story. They won't do it. Therefore, in the Model Sector Raid War, with Kuat Power Dockyard footing the bill and taking the blame, the Supreme Strategic Command had nothing to lose. If the plan succeeded, they would share in the glory. If it failed, it would be Kuat Power Shipyard's problem, not theirs. As mentioned before, the battleships invested by Kuat Power Shipyard ultimately weakened the Galactic Republic's strength. But so what? This was Kuat Dynamic Shipyard's decision, not the Supreme Strategic Headquarters. With this mindset, Cassio Tag led the Republic's expeditionary fleet in a relentless assault. From the beginning of the battle, his attacks were incessant. First, he targeted the opponent's fleet. If he faced setbacks, he increased his troops and continued the attack. Then, he attacked the ground of Anaji's planet. If he faced setbacks again, he increased his troops and continued the attack. If frustrated once more, he turned his attention to Dawn Planet. This relentless assault reflected the gambler's mentality of Kuat Dynamic Shipyard in this battle. Infected by this mentality, Cassio Tag lost his ability to make calm judgments long ago. In the later stages of the battle, his mad dog-like tactics mirrored the crazed attitude of Kuat Dynamic Shipyard and Onana Kuat, thousands of light-years away. This was in stark contrast to his role as a top student at the military academy. On the other hand, Admiral Gideon Tarkin's behavior in the Yago Dur system battle reflected the evolved tactical thinking of the new fleet commanders of the Galactic Republic. They already regarded the Principality of Dawn as an equal opponent, and their marching formations were meticulously organized. This was also due to the increasing strength of the Principality. The competition between the two sides often shifts from an asymmetrical confrontation to an evenly matched battle between two armies. In such scenarios, generals like Gideon Tarkin can better utilize their military academy training. Despite having family connections and an outstanding brother, Wilhuff Tarkin, Gideon Tarkin ascended to the position of admiral through his own merit. His accumulated experience and vision far surpassed those of someone like Cassio Tag. Admiral Gideon Tarkin adopted a methodical strategy. He first established an advance base in an uninhabited system outside the Yago-Dur system. Then he relied on shield ships positioned at a relatively distant location within the Yago-Dur system to protect a frontline base. Although his forces were actually less than those in the model sector battle, his strategic positioning posed a much greater threat. More importantly, this arrangement allowed him to deploy more small and medium-sized warships into the battlefield, rather than relying solely on capital ships due to hyperspace engine limitations. Mixed formations are inherently more powerful than single-arm formations. Even if the Galactic Republic Navy's warships or their unique types are not as advanced as those of the Principality of Dawn Navy, they can still develop stronger combat power by leveraging the strengths and weaknesses of mixed formations. Therefore, in the Battle of the Yago-Dur system, the only unexpected element for Admiral Gideon Tarkin was the Archon-class aircraft carrier and the 20,000 swarm drones. However, a single large aircraft carrier and 20,000 drones were not enough to decisively impact the war. Admiral Gideon Tarkin and Admiral Matt Horner both understood this. In the last battle, Tarkin attempted to use the electromagnetic storm produced by a stellar flare to launch an attack, hoping the swarm drones wouldn't be able to take off. He miscalculated. The force-controlled swarm drones ignored the electromagnetic storm and struck his fleet head-on. Despite this setback, the Republic fleet managed to severely damage Starbase B, one of the two Agonev-class starbases on the outskirts of the Yago-Dur system. This was significant because it meant that Starbase B would be unable to participate in future battles and could only serve as cover during subsequent ground operations. With this foundation and further reinforcements, it was not surprising that Admiral Gideon Tarkin believed he still had a chance of winning. The only variable was whether the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser he had been waiting for would arrive first, or if the Dawn Principality's fleet from the model sector would get there sooner. While Gideon Tarkin was meticulously planning to wait for the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser before launching a new round of attacks, Matt Horner was also busy preparing his own strategy inside Starbase A on the outskirts of the Yago-Dur system. Chapter 1709, Yago-Dur Counterattack 3. Gideon Tarkin harbored deep fears about the planet Yago-Dur, and conversely, Matt Horner felt the same. Within the Supreme Command of the Dawn Planet, several plans existed for capturing the Yago-Dur system. The most detailed plan involved using the Golden Rock planet as a secondary fortress to resist the Galactic Republic's invasion. However, as the home planet of the Grand People, the Golden Rock planet was naturally less fortified than the given people's Yago-Dur, which had the natural barrier of the Trisolaran Galaxy. If a fleet battle erupted in the Jinyan Galaxy, it would purely be a contest of strength between the two sides, a situation the Dawn Kingdom had always sought to avoid. Should the Yago-Dur system fall, the time to build a new line of defense in the Golden Rock system would be limited. Preparations had already begun, but progress was slow due to limited investment, with more industrial capacity allocated to new weapons, equipment, and warships. Another critical factor was the Grand People's determination to fight the Galactic Republic on their home planet. The Gran were not known for their resolve. Their willingness to fight to the end in the Battle of Marastal was partly because the battle wasn't particularly brutal, and the Galactic Republic had not committed many troops. Additionally, Malastar was not their home planet. If the Gran decided to withdraw from the war, Ain Latim, a political ally of Tang Xiao with high standing in the Confederation of Independent Systems and leader of the New Ring faction, might change his stance. This would be a triple blow to the Dawn planet, economically, militarily, and politically. Ultimately, the simplest and most direct solution was to fight to the end in the Yago-Dur system. However, the question remained, how confident was the Principality of Dawn in holding out against Admiral Gideon Tarkin's methodical offensive? The answer was, Not very. Transferring the Titan battleship Xuanwu from the Eriadu system was an option, but such a significant move couldn't be concealed. The moment the Xuanwu left Eriadu, the Galactic Republic's fleet in the Kira system would likely mobilize. This explains why Matt Horner persistently sought Tang Xiao's approval, and why Tang Xiao transferred the only Archon-class aircraft carrier from the already strained Anaji system to the Yago-Dur system. Tang Xiao knew they had few cards left to play in Yago-Dur. Matt Horner's inquiry to Bakr Banak, a mathematician from Given University, about exploitable astronomical phenomena right after the battle began, underscores their desperation. The frontline commander of the Galactic Republic's attack on the Yago-Dur system was the renowned General Gideon Tarkin. Politically, as the younger brother of Wilhuff Tarkin, Gideon received comprehensive support from all sides of the Galactic Republic. Militarily, he had the backing of Octavian Grant, the governor of the 20th Army. This was in stark contrast to the Battle of the Model Sector, where Cassio Tag, a major hastily promoted to fleet command, and Onana Quat, a businessman with no military experience, led the charge. The combination of Gideon Tarkin and Octavius Grant was formidable, a duo that had previously achieved significant victories. The Model Sector battle encompasses all aspects of warfare. With such an excellent combination of personnel, coupled with the strong logistics and industrial support of the Galactic Republic, Gideon Tarkin still chose to proceed cautiously. How can we fight under these circumstances? There's no need to fight. On the surface, it may seem that the Principality of Dawn has repeatedly defeated the Galactic Republic since the war began. The number of officers and soldiers of the Galactic Republic who have died in numerous battles with the Principality of Dawn, also known as the Fourth Civilization, has long exceeded 10 million. Nearly 1,000 battleships have been lost, thanks to the reader Governor's Soldiers for compiling and pinning a statistical post in the Thinkoth Ament area. But what about the losses of the Fourth Civilization? Although their losses were indeed much less than those of the Galactic Republic, we must not forget the huge gap in national power between the two. Before the war broke out, the Fourth Civilization had more than 150 kilometer-class battleships. This navy did not last long. After several battles, it was almost completely decimated in the Battle of Terminus. Later, Admiral Severance Tan discovered the Blade Fleet and managed to seize 178 Dreadnought-class heavy cruisers during a fierce battle with the Galactic Republic. Although these battleships were outdated, their sheer number soon became the main force of the Navy during the lean period of the Fourth Civilization. With the support of the Blade Fleet, the Fourth Civilization was able to launch the Battle of the Eriadu system and successfully occupy the Eriadu system. In this battle, the battleships of the Blade Fleet suffered heavy losses. Coupled with the continuous advancement of battleship technology on both sides, the remaining Dreadnought-class heavy cruisers could only serve as the guard fleet of the Eriadu system. Subsequently, the Fourth Civilization ceased its activities and built a fleet of nearly 200 advanced capital ships. With multiple attacks from the Galactic Republic, including the Second Battle of the Eriadu system, the Raid Battle of the Model Sector, and the current Battle of the Yago-Dur system, almost all of these newly built warships were lost. In other words, this war has lasted for less than 3 years, and the naval battleships of the Fourth Civilization have been replaced 3 times. Who is tapping the keyboard and saying that the Fourth Civilization will win easily? Now, there is only one choice before Admiral Matt Horner, the Supreme Commander of the Yago-Dur system battle and the Commander-in-Chief of the Navy of the Principality of Dawn. He must take the big gamble that Tang Xiao mentioned, betting all his wealth on one of the 2 gambling tables. Matt Horner wants to win, and he must win in the Yago-Dur system. Since he wants to bet, he has to win decisively. He must achieve a complete victory and break the Galactic Republic's defenses before they establish a firm foothold in the Yago-Dur galaxy and become unshakable in strength. The last power that Matt Horner and the Principality of Dawn can rely on is the Trisolaran galaxy. It's the Jiwan people's ultimate pursuit of mathematics that has developed over thousands of years of civilization. Chapter 1710, Yago-Dur Counterattack 4. 5 slender battleships escorted a group of transport ships to the Yago-Dur system. After delivering the supplies, these 5 battleships stayed and joined Gideon Tarkin's fleet. The Vindicator-class heavy cruiser, a 600-meter-long vessel with a roughly triangular shape, was among them. Its overall structure resembled the Galactic Republic's most advanced Knight-class and Archon-class Star Destroyers, but it was more slender and flatter. A notable feature of the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser was its decentralized turret layout, unlike the centralized layout of the Knight-class Star Destroyer, which had 20 turrets and 1 main gun group. The Vindicator-class heavy cruiser was equipped with 20 single-tube light turbo-laser cannons, 25 quadruple turbo-laser cannons, 10-point defense laser cannons, 20-point defense light ion cannons, 3 100,000-ton tractor beams. This firepower arrangement was designed to effectively combat small battleships and fighter jets. Compared to the Dreadnought-class heavy cruiser, which was also 600 meters long and equipped with 8 single-tube heavy-duty turbo-laser cannons, the Vindicator class was superior in terms of firepower distribution. The tall rear bridge of the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser housed the latest fire control system, capable of locking onto and covering all targets around it without any blind spots. For small battleships and fighter jets, entering the firepower network of the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser meant almost certain destruction. This was the first large warship designed and built by Republic Sena Systems Company. Previously, Republic Sena Systems primarily produced spacecraft engines, main engines, and control systems. Due to the nature of their products, they had secretly provided battleship engines to the Confederation of Independent Systems. Later, Speaker of the Republic Sheev Palpatine, dissatisfied with the Court Power shipyard and following the betrayal of Rendili Star Power Company, decided to support another industrial enterprise, selecting Republic Sena Systems. Palpatine exploited Republic Sena Systems' secret sales of engines to the Confederacy of Independent Systems to force their submission. He dissolved the company's original board of directors and installed his own loyalists. Although the reorganization of Republic Sena Systems was not yet complete, with capital injections secretly arranged by Palpatine, they managed to design and manufacture the conventional engines for the Knight-class Star Destroyer. Following this, they designed and manufactured the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser. For Republic Sena Systems, fire control systems and engines were their specialties, and the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser excelled in these areas. Gideon Tarkin was extremely pleased with the arrival of the Vindicator-class heavy cruiser. On the battlefield of Yago-Dur, the enemy forces he feared most were the Archon-class aircraft carrier and the swarm of 20,000 drones. After reviewing detailed combat data, he believed that with the addition of these 10 Vindicator-class heavy cruisers, his next offensive would be unstoppable. Previously, the main air defense force of the Republic fleet, aside from its own fighter fleet, was the DP-20 gunboat. The design concept, the 120-meter-long frigate-class warship, was primarily designed to combat small spacecraft and fighter jets. However, its combat capabilities have become outdated on the modern battlefield. The DP-20, designed by Corellia Engineering Company for caravan escort, reflects this obsolescence. Corellia Engineering, a major industrial giant, has not fully committed to military manufacturing, instead focusing on civilian ships to generate wealth. Consequently, DP-20 gunboats are often targeted and destroyed by small, high-speed warships from the Principality of Dawn. Among the various warships in the Principality of Dawn's fleet, the Brown Bear-class heavy destroyer is particularly effective against the DP-20. This 288-meter-long destroyer is fast, powerful, and heavily armored, though it lacks range and flexibility. Once it locks onto a DP-20, it can destroy it with precision. In contrast, only capital ship-level battleships can compete with the Navy of the Principality of Dawn, giving them a significant advantage. Gideon Tarkin stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing out the window at 5 new warships slowly approaching the barges for maintenance and overhaul. His excitement was palpable. "But why are there only 5? And why are they all Vindicators?" he asked, frowning. Behind him stood a director from Republic Sena Systems Company, who replied respectfully, 5 other Vindicator-class ships experienced hyperspace engine damage during long-distance jumps. They are currently being repaired at the forward base and should be ready in 2 or 3 days. Additionally, all systems on these prototype ships are functioning normally. I believe this will be a successful combat test. Another 2 or 3 days? Gideon Tarkin's frown deepened, his earlier good mood dampened. His intuition told him that he might have already waited too long. The Separatist fleet had thwarted his previous attack, causing heavy losses, and had since remained near the Yago-Dur system, seemingly unable to defend. Normally, they should have taken advantage of their victory to pursue or at least harass his transportation lines. But they had done neither, choosing only to defend. Should he attack now or wait a few more days? Both options had their merits, leaving even the experienced Gideon Tarkin uncertain. He recalled his confident attack in the last battle, believing that the Separatist Archon-class carriers and swarm drones would struggle in the electromagnetic storm. Instead, his forces were severely hit. The swarm drones were too powerful and unpredictable. With only 5 Defender-class ships, what if the enemy had more surprises in store? After much deliberation, Gideon Tarkin decided to wait. Waiting for all 10 Defender-class ships to arrive before launching the attack seemed more prudent. This decision, made after 5 minutes of contemplation, would later become one he deeply regretted. Chapter 711, Yago-Dur Counterattack 5. We must ensure that the supplies are complete. This attack may last for more than 3 days, Admiral Gideon Tarkin said as he signed a document. Send the supplies transportation plan over within an hour so that the rear base is ready. I want to check it myself. Yes, sir. The logistics officer stood at attention and saluted. Take me to the astronomy department. I want to know the movements of the stars in the Yago-Dur system over the next 7 days. Gideon Tarkin continued. General, here are the calculation results from our astronomers. A scientist promptly presented a prepared report. According to the current movement of the 3 stars, the largest star, number 1, is currently in a relatively stable state. The other 2 stars are revolving in different orbits. However, due to their mutual gravitational influence, star number 3 may approach star number 2 in 2 days. The 2 stars will then form a short-lived binary star system, which should remain stable for about 2 years. Admiral Gideon Tarkin looked at the report, frowning. What about the planet Yago-Dur? How will it behave during this orbital change? The scientist, confident in his findings, immediately replied, During this orbital change, the planet Yago-Dur will be captured by the gravity of both stars. Due to the distance, it will break away from the gravitational control of star number 1 and become a satellite of this binary star system. However, the gravity of star number 1 is still strong. Under such influence, the rotation speed of the Yago planet will accelerate, and the gravity on the planet will increase by about 1.17 times. Gideon Tarkin nodded thoughtfully. So, in the next 2 years, the orbit of Yago-Dur will be relatively stable until the binary system of stars number 2 and number 3 disintegrates. That's correct. In fact, under the influence of this binary star system, the rotation speed of star number 1 is also slowly accelerating. In 2 years, this acceleration will cause star number 1 to shift into a new orbit, disrupting the gravitational balance of the 3 stars and causing the galaxy to become chaotic again. How chaotic will it be? Gideon Tarkin asked casually. With the equipment we currently have, we are unable to complete such calculations, the scientist admitted, shaking his head. But what will happen to the Yago-Dur galaxy at that time has little to do with us. This planet has already returned to the embrace of the Republic, and the Jiwan people will have to deal with it themselves. It's okay, I was just asking. You can leave. Gideon Tarkin nodded. Yes, sir. The scientist turned and left. Gideon Tarkin sighed in relief and returned to his work, determined to ensure that the upcoming offensive was flawless. About 2 hours later, Admiral Gideon Tarkin was speaking to the flight control commander of the fighter formation via communication. However, the communication was very unstable, with severe interference and noise. After much effort to finish the conversation, Gideon Tarkin, visibly frustrated, turned to his secretary. Get the communications department to fix this immediately. Is it interference from the separatists or some other factor? I cannot launch an attack in such a communication environment. General, the communications department has just sent a message explaining that an electromagnetic storm is passing by. It will pass soon, and communications will be restored, the secretary explained. Gideon Tarkin nodded, still doubtful. At that moment, a communication came from the rear base. Amid the intermittent words, Gideon Tarkin understood that the last 5 Vindicator-class heavy cruisers had been prepared and would set off in an hour. I understand, he said. We have made all the necessary preparations here, and all supplies have been organized separately. Once the 5 Defender-class ships arrive, they will complete their combat preparations within half an hour and immediately join the attack. Admiral Dean Tarkin declared with authority. However, he had to repeat this simple directive 4 times before the other party understood. Frustrated, he threw down the communicator and turned to his secretary. We need to restore communication within 1 hour. If not, everyone in the communications department will be held accountable. Meanwhile, the communications department was in utter chaos. Antenna number 7. Why is there no signal from antenna number 7? Forget antenna number 7. All our signal transmissions are malfunctioning. Have we identified the source of the interference? Where is it coming from? I don't know. It's not from star number 2 or star number 3. The interference is originating from an empty region. Could it be a new separatist interference device? The sensors have scanned the area. There's nothing there. What if there's a stealth system in place? Can you design a system that emits powerful electromagnetic interference signals while remaining invisible? Has the astronomy department provided any explanation? I asked them 10 minutes ago, and they haven't responded. Then send someone over to get an answer in person. At that moment, a technician suddenly froze. He pointed at the screen, stuttering, number 2. What are you talking about? The Minister of Communications demanded as he approached. But then he too was stunned, his entire body rigid with shock. On the galaxy star map displayed on the screen, the trajectory of star number 2 was changing dramatically. The star was visibly leaving its current orbit and moving in another direction. Damn it, I knew it. The electromagnetic storm earlier was a precursor to the star's orbit change, the Minister of Communications shouted. Quick, go to the astronomy department. Didn't they say the orbit change would occur in 2 days? Simultaneously, chaos erupted in the astronomy department. Star number 2 has changed its orbit. This is impossible. How different is the new orbit from our calculations? A scientist exclaimed, jumping to the screen filled with countless trajectories. There is a difference in angular velocity. The rotation speed is also accelerating. If this trend continues, there will be a 0.34667 degree difference between the new orbit of star number 2 and our calculated result. Recalculate the new orbits immediately. Done. According to the current trajectory, star number 2 will pass 21 million kilometers away from us. No, that's too close. It's dangerous. Notify General Tarkin immediately. No, this calculation is wrong. What's wrong? The Minister of Astronomy roared. Star number 2 is accelerating, and it's turning. Chapter 1712, Yagodur Counterattack 6. Accelerate, turn? The Minister of Astronomy was stunned. This is impossible. According to the current position and rotation direction of star number 3, it is impossible to accelerate star number 2. The new trajectory has been calculated. If we follow the acceleration and steering this time, there will be an angle difference of minus 0.11727 from our original calculated trajectory. By then, the trajectory of the second star should be 40 million kilometers away from our fleet. This distance should be harmless. Why can such a violent orbit change happen 2 full days in advance? The Minister of Astronomy demanded. This is simply impossible. Have you calculated the result? No. An astronomer shook his head blankly. Have you factored in the gravity of Yagodur's planet? Yes, the gravity of the Yagodur planet is completely insufficient to cause a star to turn. Minister, we've figured it out. What caused the acceleration and rotation of star number 2 is the Yagodur planet. Another astronomer displayed a screen full of calculation formulas. This is impossible. The Minister of Astronomy rushed over, almost pressing his face against the screen to see the calculation results. Gravitational waves. They are gravitational waves. the astronomer explained. The interaction between the second and third stars has produced a large number of gravitational wave traps around them. In the past 7 days, the Yagodur planet has resonated with the frequency of the largest gravitational wave trap. During this process, this gravitational wave began to become extremely powerful, and it also resonated with other gravitational waves. This became the fifth source of gravity here. This gravitational wave is the source of interference in our communications as before. Another astronomer suddenly realized. No wonder the Ministry of Communications said there is nothing at the location of the interference source. Their radar equipment cannot detect gravitational waves. So, it is the combined effect of this gravitational wave and the Yagodur planet that caused star number 2 to accelerate its rotation? Asked the Minister of Astronomy. Yes, it's the gravitational slingshot effect. Are you kidding me? There's no way a planet could act as a gravitational slingshot to a star. There is also the role of the powerful gravitational wave in this, and as I said before, the rotation of the Yagodur planet resonates with the gravitational wave, and the direction of gravity is exactly along the orbit of star number 2. The trajectory after that, just like a ball will accelerate when it passes through a curve. But what? Under the action of the gravitational slingshot effect, star number 2 will certainly turn and accelerate, but in such a gravitational system, the object with lower mass will be thrown out. The astronomer's face turned pale. Minister, the Yagodur planet is accelerating. It is also out of orbit. It is accelerating. There was an exclamation from the side. What's the direction? What's the speed? The Minister of Astronomy asked loudly. The speed has exceeded 300 kilometers per second and is still increasing. The direction is... The astronomer turned his head and looked at the minister with a dull expression. It's heading towards us. The originally chaotic scene suddenly became deathly silent. After 10 seconds, the Minister of Astronomy suddenly shouted hysterically, "Retreat! We must retreat! I'm going to find General Tarkin now! Retreat!" As he spoke, he rushed out of the door and stumbled away. Immediately afterwards, the entire astronomy department became noisy and chaotic again. At this time, the entire Yagodur planet had turned into a cannonball, rushing straight towards the Galactic Republic fleet. This is not an ordinary artillery shell. If I must say it, then this is a super artillery shell with a caliber of 11,000 kilometers. The Republic fleet was in peril, with a massive planet hurtling towards them at an incredible speed. Although the planet would pass more than 50,000 kilometers away from the fleet, the destructive power of such a close flyby was immense, potentially catastrophic. The entire Yagodur planet had become a hazardous zone. The Aganev-class Interstellar Base A, along with other space facilities, remained in fixed orbits and were left behind when the planet's orbit changed. Engineering ships had to tow them to new locations on Yagodur. However, Interstellar Base B was not as fortunate. Previously, it had sustained severe damage during an offensive by the Galactic Republic fleet and was forced into a planet-synchronous orbit. Now, with the planet's orbit shifting, objects with lower mass were being ejected into space. Under the watchful eyes of many naval officers from the Dawn Principality, including Admiral Matt Horner, Interstellar Base B was flung out of Yagodur's gravitational range, drifting into the vast universe. If nothing intervened, the base would eventually be consumed by the violent number 2 star. Fortunately, Matt Horner had anticipated this outcome and had already evacuated all personnel and salvaged as much valuable equipment as possible. Despite these precautions, the loss of an entire interstellar base was a significant blow. At this critical moment, the entire defense fleet of the Principality of Dawn surrounded Yagodur, with engines at maximum output, striving to maintain their position within the planet's gravity. This was a highly precise operation. Even a slight miscalculation could result in being ejected into space like Starbase B. If a battleship couldn't stabilize itself, it would meet the same fate, ultimately being swallowed by the star. The given people's best mathematical team, including Bakr Banak, worked tirelessly, using their most accurate calculations to help the warships adjust their engine output and positions. Their goal was to ensure the fleet could follow Yagodur's trajectory like a cannonball. However, this was not foolproof. Suddenly, a Cole-class battlecruiser was thrown off course due to a miscalculation, spinning uncontrollably despite its engines being at full power. Moments later, a Martha-class guided missile heavy cruiser suffered the same fate. The high-speed rolling rendered the crew inside unconscious, and the fate of an uncontrolled spacecraft was grim. Admiral Matt Horner watched with sorrow as several battleships were flung into space, but his resolve remained unshaken. Only victory could justify these sacrifices. Thanks to Guardians Calvinlen and Xiangyao for the 500 starting coins. Chapter 1713, a brief discussion on the Jiwen people. Amidst such horrific astronomical changes, the entire Yago-Dur galaxy has transformed into a hellish landscape. Even a planet with a diameter of more than 11,000 kilometers is tossed around like a pinball in this three-body galaxy. The terrifying scene made everyone in the Dawn Principality tremble with fear. The insignificance of life becomes glaringly apparent in the face of the vastness of the universe. Even with the most powerful battleships and terrifying weapons at their disposal, they are as helpless as a leaf in a tsunami amid such cosmic upheavals. Although they knew that the Yago-Dur galaxy was a three-body galaxy and understood its terrifying nature, they had never experienced it firsthand. There are places in the universe millions of times scarier than the Trisolaran galaxy, but those places are essentially restricted areas for life. No one ventures there, and thus no one experiences them. However, this time, the violent Yago-Dur galaxy delivered the most direct shock to them. The reason they hadn't felt it before was that the Yago-Dur galaxy had been in a stable period since the fourth civilization appeared in the Andor galaxy. So even if they had visited, they wouldn't have witnessed such shocking astronomical phenomena. But now, everything is different. Stars move around irregularly. Even with the naked eye, one can see completely abnormal stars flying around. Planets are also thrown about under such gravitational forces, leaving no room for stability. However, Bakr Benak, the great mathematician of the Jiwen people, who has been standing next to General Matt Horner, remains extremely calm. Although his expression is hidden, he stands firmly, holding the scepter, unwavering. This kind of situation is already familiar to the Jiwen people and is commonplace for them. Millions of years ago, the civilization of the Jiwen people was born in the underground space of the Yago-Dur system. Due to the extreme environment they lived in, they evolved external cuticles, or in other words, protective outer layers. These cuticles can be absolutely sealed, making them resistant to heat, cold, and impact, a natural spacesuit. This adaptation is crucial because even in the underground space of the Yago-Dur planet, the atmosphere is often stripped away due to the passing of stars, resulting in extremely thin air. This unique body structure allows them to survive and obtain nutrients and oxygen through fungi and plants in the underground space. Although they may look peculiar, resembling the ghost in Scream, the Jiwen people have developed a highly advanced civilization. During the uninhabitable periods on the planet Yago-Dur, they reduce their activities and hide deep in caves, waiting for the stable years to arrive. It is precisely because of this that the Jiwen people developed exceptional mathematical skills, tirelessly calculating the operating rules of this three-body galaxy. Their mathematical prowess is unmatched in the entire Milky Way. They eventually succeeded, increasing their calculation accuracy to more than 80%. This achievement is partly due to the three-body structure of the Yago-Dur galaxy, composed of one large star and two smaller ones. Compared to three stars of similar size, this configuration is relatively simple and more stable. Most of the time, the largest star, number 1, occupies the dominant position, staying in the center of the galaxy. After mastering the ability to calculate and predict the movement of this galaxy, the Jiwen people began to develop rapidly. Their precise calculations led to a highly advanced shipbuilding industry. The spacecraft built by the Jiwen people are strong and stable, capable of navigating even the most extreme environments with ease. Many expedition and scientific research teams favor ordering spaceships from the Jiwen people. The Jiwen have also begun to experiment with building ground cities. After enduring the harsh conditions imposed by three stars for a long time, the surface of Yago-Dur's planet Ha has become extremely hard, covered with crystal layers and obsidian structures. This resilience has prevented the planet from being torn apart by abnormal gravitational forces. Despite these challenges, the tenacious Jiwen people have managed to construct numerous ground cities, allowing them to finally stand on their home soil and gaze up at the sky, which, though not particularly beautiful, represents their greatest luxury. These surface cities are designed to retract underground quickly, as the planet frequently faces catastrophic events. For many years, the Jiwen have been reinforcing their planet to prevent its disintegration, driving massive support structures thousands of kilometers underground and interconnecting them to strengthen the planet. Their history records a particularly harrowing period when Yago-Dur orbited no more than 6 million kilometers from the second star for 3 standard years. This proximity, almost face-to-face and only 10 times the Roche limit distance from the third star, turned those 3 years into a living hell. The planet was almost entirely covered by volcanoes and lava, resulting in the deaths of many Jiwen people who were forced to burrow deeper underground. Ultimately, none survived on the surface. As a result, the Jiwen people do not hold a sentimental attachment to their homeland. They are indifferent to Yago-Dur becoming a battlefield or being launched like a cannonball. This is because Tang Xiao has promised them a future. The Jiwen people will become an important race within the Fourth Civilization and a member of it. Tang Xiao has also agreed to allow the Jiwen to establish a permanent colony on planet Lada. After the current battle, the Jiwen will begin preparations to construct a colony on planet Lada, transporting some of their precious collections and cultural relics there to settle. The plot concerning planet Lada will be discussed later. For now, know that it is the origin of Rise of the Rebels. Matt Horner is taking a gamble, and so are the Jiwen. Although their goals differ, their bets are now all on the planet Yago-Dur. This planet is hurtling towards the Republic fleet at high speed, like a cannonball. Radar signals now show the Republic fleet scattering in all directions, with all warships dispersing and fleeing. Even the 4 shield ships used to build the frontline base defense have turned to escape. There is no other option. Facing a planet crashing into them at high speed, even 10,000 shield ships would be powerless to stop it. End of chapter. Chapter 7:14. Yago-Dur Counterattack. 7. What is the concept of a planet hitting at high speed, especially now that the speed of this planet has exceeded 500 kilometers per second? For a little comparison, a 10mm caliber bullet can reach a speed of 500,000 meters per second through multi-level electromagnetic acceleration. This speed is equivalent to 50 times the speed of bullets fired by ordinary gunpowder. At this speed, even a 10mm caliber bullet can easily penetrate tank armor with the kinetic energy attached to it. Now, imagine enlarging this bullet to 11,000 kilometers. What kind of kinetic energy would that entail? It can only be said that all the creations of intelligent life today cannot sustain even 1 second under such terrifying power. This situation is really happening here, on the planet Yago-Dur. After receiving the warning from the astronomer, Admiral Gideon Tarkin, the commander of the Republic fleet, could not care less and directly issued an order for the entire army to disperse immediately. In the face of this devastating astronomical phenomenon, no attack plan or military honor is important anymore. The only thing they can do is run. And it's not an organized run, it's the kind of escape that goes as far as you can. The planet Yago-Dur is too close to them. The Republic fleet's position was originally about 1 million kilometers away from the orbit of the Yago-Dur planet. But now the Yago-Dur planet has suddenly detached from its orbit and accelerated under the action of the gravitational slingshot. To fly here, it only takes a few seconds to an hour. The mathematicians of the Galactic Republic are not even elementary school students compared to the mathematicians of the given people. Again, don't use your own interests to challenge the tools that others rely on for survival. The civilization of the Jiwen people has been able to develop to this day, relying on mathematics. It is the calculation and prediction of the three-body galaxy. They didn't have any time to assemble and line up, so the only thing they could do was to run away. And this is also the only and last chance for the Dawn Principality fleet. The Dawn Principality fleet is close to the Yago-Dur planet, and the engine output is turned to the maximum, correcting the direction at all times and flying directly towards the Republic fleet with the planet. This time, the fighter plane was both accidental and inevitable. Coincidentally, it was because such an extreme astronomical phenomenon occurred during the battle. It must be because since the target of the Galactic Republic's attack is the planet Yago-Dur, no matter how they arrange their troops, there is a high chance that they will appear on the trajectory of the planet Yago-Dur. Now, the Yago-Dur planet will take the Dawn Principality's fleet and fly past the Republic's fleet at high speed from a distance of 50,000 kilometers. At this distance and speed, the warships of the Republic will be greatly affected. They have to open their shields and engines at full speed to resist the violent and chaotic gravity and radiation. Their communication system was greatly interfered with, and their shields were constantly damaged. Some spaceships with smaller engine output were even thrown away by the violent gravity. At this time, Bakr Benak also issued his own order. The time has come. Prepare to leave immediately. Proceed according to our calculation results. Act immediately. Admiral Matt Horner also issued the order. The G1 mathematicians stationed on each battleship of the Dawn Principality fleet immediately entered data on the navigation computer based on the position and speed of the battleship. One by one, these warships began to break away along the rotation direction of the Yago-Dur planet, once again forming a gravitational slingshot effect and shot towards the Republic fleet at high speed. Unlike the Republic's warships, which resisted the gravity of the Yago-Dur planet head-on, the Dawn Principality's fleet followed the planet's rotation direction. The battleships were essentially being launched with great force. As a result, they didn't sustain any damage, but instead achieved an incredibly high initial speed almost instantly. The battleship engines continuously adjusted their direction to prevent rolling over, then began to turn while advancing at high speed, heading towards the disorganized and retreating Republic fleet. The distance of over 50,000 kilometers closed in an instant, coinciding with the peak of the Yago-Dur planet's intense gravitational influence. It was as if the Principality of Dawn's fleet was riding a massive wave, forcing the Galactic Republic fleet to confront not only the battleships, but also an unstoppable giant wave and tsunami. Under this overwhelming force, the Republic fleet was almost instantly defeated. In reality, they were already in a state of retreat when the Dawn Principality fleet suddenly pierced their center. The planet Yago-Dur departed as swiftly as it had arrived. As its violent gravity gradually dissipated, Gideon Tarkin was shocked to find that the fleets of both sides were now entangled. A more optimistic perspective would be, we have surrounded the Separatist fleet. However, the harsh reality was, we have no formation at all, and the Separatist fleet has already assumed an attack formation, cutting directly into the center of our formation. Despite the Republic fleet outnumbering the Principality of Dawn fleet 3-1, Admiral Gideon Tarkin doubted their chances of victory in a direct artillery battle. The Jaeger-class battlecruisers, which made up the bulk of the Republic's fleet, were not designed for close-range artillery battles. As expected, the Principality of Dawn's battleships unleashed their full firepower without hesitation. Heavy artillery rained down on the Republic battleships. Gideon Tarkin quickly regained his composure and began commanding his fleet to return fire and resist. He reorganized the ships into 4 temporary battle groups to mount a coordinated defense. During this chaos, Tarkin noticed several unfamiliar warships within the Dawn Principality's fleet. These ships were flat, rectangular parallelepipeds, resembling coal ships. They had appeared in a previous battle on the planet Malastare, and the Galactic Republic intelligence had identified them as Kesov-class battlecruisers. Seeing these ships, Tarkin frowned. Simultaneously, the hangar platforms of all the Dawn Principality's battleships opened, releasing a large number of fighter jets. No, not fighters. These were triangular-hulled spacecraft, the raid landing ships occasionally used by the Confederacy of Independent Systems. These assault landing ships had a single purpose, to deploy a large number of combat robots directly onto enemy ships for boarding and close-quarters combat. The Kesov-class battlecruisers also began to move. The large landing pods mounted on both sides of the battleships detached and flew directly towards the Republic fleet. End of chapter. Chapter 1715, Yagodl's Counterattack. 8. What the Separatist warship launched wasn't a fighter jet. It was a landing ship. An adjutant shouted in shock. Reform as soon as possible. We cannot fight in such chaotic conditions. Inform all ships to shoot down those landing ships at all costs. Admiral Gideon Tarkin commanded loudly. At this moment, seeing the menacing assault landing ships, the adjutant turned pale with fright. In the previous war, the Confederation of Independent Systems had not used boarding operations. However, due to the improvement of naval tactics and the continuous refinement of combat regulations, the Navy of the Galactic Republic now rarely provided opportunities for such operations. The preserved records and images of the Confederate Robot Corps' boarding battles were all shocking. In the confined spaces inside the battleships, encountering those robot legions with their infinite strength and steel bodies often resulted in brutal massacres, even of the powerful Camino clone troops. The fragmented corpses, blood splattered everywhere, and cabins full of charred remains were horrific memories left behind by those barbaric boarding battles. Such records could still be found in the Republic Navy's database. They served as a stern reminder for the Republic Navy generals to strictly follow the battlefield manual to avoid being exploited by the enemy for boarding operations. After all, the restrictions on boarding operations were significant. According to the Republic Navy's requirements, unless absolutely necessary, they were not allowed to get closer to enemy warships than a distance of 1,000 kilometers, and fighter jets had to be escorted around them at all times. Most importantly, at least one of the shields or the hatch had to remain protected and could not be opened simultaneously. These were the major limitations of boarding combat. First, it required close proximity. Second, the landing ship was easily attacked by fighter jets. Third, it needed to find a way to enter the opponent's warship. If any of these conditions were not met, the boarding tactic would fail. Often, the price paid was very high, including elite boarding combat troops, expensive landing ships, and more importantly, the reduction in the carrying capacity of other materials, such as precious carrier-based aircraft, in order to carry these things. The reduction of carrier-based aircraft meant a decline in battleship combat capabilities. Under such circumstances, this could lead to the failure of the entire battle. But now, the commanders of the Republic fleet at all levels were horrified to find that all these conditions were now met by this separatist fleet. Their fleet, carried by the Yago planet, flew over at high speed, and when their own fleet's formation was in chaos, it directly inserted into the center of the formation. In this way, the distance problem was solved because the distance between the warships on both sides was mostly within 100 kilometers. At the same time, all the fighter jets did not take off due to the extremely violent gravity. In the situation just now, even if there were fighter jets, they would have been captured by the planet passing by at high speed, pulled into the planet's gravitational circle by the violent gravity, and then thrown out in the high-speed rotation. During this process, it was impossible for any fighter to remain intact. So the second problem, fighter escort, was perfectly solved. In fact, now facing the separatist fleet that suddenly inserted into their formation, the first reaction of many warships in the Galactic Republic fleet, besides opening fire, was to subconsciously want to launch fighter jets. The Jaeger-class battlecruiser did not have enough firepower to deal with such close-range artillery attacks, so it could only... The Republic fleet attempted to rely on fighter jets to compensate for their firepower gap. However, when they opened the massive hangar platform hatch at the front, it signaled that the third condition for boarding was met. The entrance and exit were wide open. Countless assault landing craft launched by the Dawn Principality fleet sped towards their targets. Their primary focus was on the Jaeger-class battlecruisers that had opened their hangar platforms to deploy fighter jets. The Republic warships fired in an attempt to intercept these assault landing craft, but their efforts were largely ineffective. The fleet was disorganized, lacking any coordinated tactics, such as crossfire or supplementary shooting angles. Within less than 10 minutes of the battle commencing, several warships were already under attack by the assault landing craft. During this time, fewer than 10 assault landing craft were shot down by anti-aircraft fire. Boom, boom, boom. Several loud explosions echoed as 3 assault landing craft crashed directly into the hangar platform of a Jaeger-class battlecruiser, obliterating several V-wing Alpha Holy Light fighters that were preparing for takeoff. Following the explosions, the doors of the landing craft were blown open. Amidst terrifying animalistic roars, dozens of Inkori with blackened scales and abnormally developed muscles surged out. These Inkori appeared to lack clear consciousness, attacking any living creature in sight. Behind them, a B-1 combat robot, missing its lower body, continued to fire E-5 blaster rifles from its shoulders. Although the firepower was minimal, it provided some long-range suppression. The Inchori Avengers, resurrected and mutated with the T-virus, were extremely powerful and fast. One of them leaped over 10 meters, landing among several pilots who hadn't yet boarded their planes. With its razor-sharp claws, it unleashed a bloody massacre. Marines stationed on the hangar platform, Sparty clone soldiers, were no match for the Inchori Avengers. The invincible biological weapons plowed through them, killing with impunity. The terrified technicians quickly sealed the internal hatch of the hangar platform, hoping to contain the monstrous invaders. But then, to everyone's horror, the 3 assault landing craft that had crashed in began to fall through the hangar platform floor. The landing craft were still operational. After crashing, they activated sharp cutters at their front ends, using ultra-high-temperature laser welding to drill large holes in the ground. By this time, the Inchori Avengers had slaughtered everyone on the hangar platform. Seeing the holes in the ground, they jumped in without hesitation. Now, nothing could stop these monstrous biological weapons from wreaking havoc and causing a horrific massacre within the battleship. Chapter 1716, Yago-Dur Counterattack, 9. Stay calm! Stay calm! Admiral Gideon Tarkin roared, his voice echoing through the command center. On the holographic star map before him, the warships of both sides were already engaged in a close-range artillery battle, their positions interwoven in a chaotic dance of destruction. The Separatist warships had launched thousands of assault landing craft, which now flew towards the Republic warships. Their targets were those ships that had lost their shield protection or had deployed their hangar platforms to launch fighter jets. The current situation was indeed the perfect time for boarding actions, as raising shields to resist the assault landing craft was now beyond their capabilities. When the planet Yago-Dur had passed by at high speed, its violent and chaotic gravity and radiation had subjected the shields of the Republic fleet to a severe test. Most of these warships' shields were now in poor condition, with some even completely broken. Gideon Tarkin, seeing the situation clearly, issued his orders. Notify all battleships. Those that have not opened their hangar platforms, stop immediately. Do not take off any more fighter jets. For those that have opened their hangar platforms, take off all fighters as quickly as possible and move behind the formation. The only viable option now was to launch the fighter jets, as they were the only effective means to intercept the assault landing craft. Relying on the anti-aircraft firepower of the Jaeger-class battlecruisers was futile. However, launching fighter jets posed the risk of the hangar platforms being open and vulnerable to boarding. The solution was to sacrifice some warships, allowing them to launch their fighter jets as quickly as possible. Whether these warships would be boarded was a secondary concern. Fortunately, many warships had already begun launching fighter jets upon realizing the Dawn Principality fleet's intention to board, saving one step in the process. For those battleships that had deployed their hangar platforms, they were to be sacrificed. Under Gideon Tarkin's strict orders, the Republic fleet made some movements, but not enough to restore order. The entire fleet was in a state of panic and confusion. Warships that had been boarded were moving erratically, trying to get close to other friendly ships for reinforcements, further adding to the chaos. Reorganizing into formation was now nearly impossible. When the Yago-Dur planet collided, the Republic fleet had already been in a state of disarray, with each battleship fleeing in different directions. The warships were now extremely scattered, with some areas densely packed with logistics ships, others with Jaeger-class warships, and still others with small and medium-sized warships. Admiral Gideon Tarkin had initially relied on a steady strategy to form a mixed battleship formation, aiming for diversified operations. But now, with the formation in such disarray, the concept of complementing each other's strengths was meaningless. In this melee, the Republic battleship that performed best was not the Jaeger-class battlecruiser, which had been heavily damaged, nor the Knight-class Star Destroyer, which could only stand and resist due to design flaws. Surprisingly, it was the Aquitans-class light cruiser that shone. With its ferocious firepower, flexible speed, and lack of shooting blind spots, the Aquitans-class light cruiser proved formidable. The assault landing craft that attempted to board it found themselves facing a 325-meter warship that was anything but easy prey. Despite the high speed of the Aquitans-class light cruiser, it was not easy for the landing craft to board it. In the ensuing chaos, the captains of the Aquitans-class light cruisers spontaneously began to gather together and launched a decisive flanking maneuver against the fleet of the Principality of Dawn. However, this could no longer turn the tide of the battle. The shield of a Knight-class Star Destroyer was breached, and its outer armor belt was blown apart and set ablaze. Dozens of assault landing craft, resembling vampire bats, swarmed towards the damaged sections. The sharp cutting devices at the front of these craft began slicing through the hull armor. Once a large hole was cut, the landing craft descended and attached themselves to the ship. The hatches opened, and soldiers clad in black N7 heavy combat uniforms rushed out. They quickly formed several three-person teams and dispersed in different directions within the battleship. The soldiers bore a distinctive logo on their chests, Fourth. They were the Fourth Legion, the most formidable armed force of the Principality of Dawn. "Over there! Quick, stop them!" A group of clone soldiers hurried over. Spotting the landing craft in the distance, they raised their guns and fired without hesitation. A Fourth Legion soldier raised his hand, and the universal tool on his wrist instantly generated an energy shield, blocking all incoming shots. After a dazzling exchange of gunfire and explosions, the smoke cleared, revealing the shield-bearing soldier of the Fourth Legion standing alone. "Are you looking for us?" A cold voice came from the ceiling behind the clone troopers. They turned around in shock to find several Fourth Legion soldiers hanging upside down from the ceiling, their shoes equipped with electromagnetic boots. "Black Legion?" a clone soldier managed to utter before being engulfed by a barrage of intense firepower. The rapid fire of the N7 Valkyrie assault rifles tore through the clone troopers, leaving the scene in disarray. "Access the system and determine our current position," ordered the captain of the Fourth Legion squad. He raised a finger and signaled, "Deploy drones." "Yes, sir." A female team member approached a nearby data cable access port, using her universal tool to interface with the system and attempt to hack into the battleship's internal network. Meanwhile, another soldier activated a button, releasing 4 spherical drones from his backpack. The drones flew into the depths of the battleship. The other soldiers were not idle either. They formed groups of 3 and began to explore the surroundings under the guidance of the drones. Soon the sound of short, intense gunfire echoed from a distance. The female team member closed her universal tool and reported, "The regional map has been downloaded. There's a magnetic track channel nearby that leads to the bottom of the bridge. The map has been transferred to your universal tools." "Excellent work," the captain acknowledged. He made a gesture, and the Fourth Legion soldiers immediately understood. They silently divided into several directions and quickly disappeared into the depths of the battleship corridor. Chapter 1717, Yago Dur Counterattack. 10. Report, a separatist landing force has boarded our ship. The number is unknown. 7 cabins have lost contact. An officer ran to the captain of the Knight-class Star Destroyer, panic evident in his voice. The captain's face was grim as he asked solemnly, "How many landing craft have boarded?" The officer's face grew even more frightened. 44 ships. Each separatist landing craft can carry 20 to 30 soldiers. Even the most optimistic estimate means that close to 1,000 soldiers have boarded my battleship. How many Marines can we still contact? The captain inquired. Due to different combat missions, The Marines on our warship are not at full strength. Initially, there were only 4,000 Marines on board. Some lost contact during the shelling and raid just now, and only about 3,000 can be contacted now, the officer replied. The captain of the Knight-class Star Destroyer fell into a brief silence, staring at the exploded view of the battleship on the screen in front of him. Hundreds of locations on the ship were marked in red, with some areas sounding alarms. These were all places where the armor had been penetrated by artillery fire during the previous battle. When his Knight-class Star Destroyer collided with the planet Yagodur, it was in a very bad position and was torn apart by strong gravity. The deflector shield consumed a lot of electrical energy. To make matters worse, during the chaos, his warship even collided with a transport ship. The transport ship was immediately smashed to pieces by the massive 600-meter-long hull of the Knight-class Star Destroyer, but this also exacerbated the energy loss of the deflection shield. Unexpectedly, a separatist warship suddenly flew out from the planet Yagodur, catching the captain off guard. In his opinion, the high-speed rotation of the planet should have thrown out everything in synchronous orbit. How could those warships still follow the planet? This was not a simple task of following the planet. The planet's rotation speed was also accelerating, so these battleships had to constantly correct their position and speed, using their own engine thrust to stay close to the planet. Any slight calculation error would result in being thrown out by the planet's strong gravitational force, causing the battleship to lose control and roll. In such a scenario, the anti-gravity device would be completely damaged in seconds, and the crew would be knocked unconscious or even killed by hitting the bulkhead. However, a miracle unfolded before the eyes of all the officers and soldiers of the Republic fleet. The Separatist fleet managed to fly close to the planet Yagodur, using the planet's gravity to create a gravitational slingshot effect. This accelerated them again, allowing them to rush directly into the center of the formation at an unimaginable speed. And this was not achieved by just 2 battleships, but a full fleet of 50 battleships. Under such circumstances, the captain had no choice but to order his Knight-class Star Destroyer to counterattack, even though he was reluctant. The firepower layout of the Knight-class Star Destroyer meant that if he turned around and fled, they would be even more vulnerable. All the firepower of the Knight-class was directed at the front. If they turned around, their large round rear would be defenseless. The captain's reluctance stemmed from the fact that the current formation was in an extremely unfavorable state. As is well known, formation is the most crucial aspect of fleet battles. Only by maintaining formation can a fleet maximize its combat effectiveness. When engaging in naval warfare, it is crucial to concentrate your firepower effectively. This could mean focusing on attacking a specific enemy warship or providing fire support to damaged friendly ships to cover their retreat. Formation is equally important, especially when facing an enemy fighter formation attack. A fleet must form a multi-layered and multi-angle air defense fire circle to effectively intercept enemy fighter jets. This is something a single warship's firepower cannot achieve. Without proper formation, there is no point in fighting. If firepower cannot be concentrated, the enemy warship can retreat calmly after being hit, avoid our shooting angles, make emergency repairs, and continue fighting. If an anti-aircraft fire circle cannot be formed, the entire battlefield will be left to enemy fighter jets. In the current situation, they have no way to intercept the overwhelming assault landing craft. During the ensuing artillery battle, the Knight-class Star Destroyer was heavily attacked and hit by several Yamato cannons fired by the Behemoth-class battlecruiser. The deflector shield was finally breached. Once the assault landing craft discovered that the Knight-class Star Destroyer's shield was down, they swarmed it like mosquitoes drawn to blood. This is a Knight-class Star Destroyer, one of only 9 remaining in the Republic fleet, each one incredibly powerful. The 44 assault landing craft, like blood-sucking mosquitoes, latched onto the battleship, targeting the wounds that had penetrated the armored belt during the shelling. These landing craft were everywhere, on the upper deck, sides, rear, belly of the battleship, and one even rushed directly under the bridge. Gather all the Marines to protect the bridge and power system. After ensuring the safety of these two areas, we will gradually advance and clear out all enemy forces entering our ship," the captain ordered. "Yes, sir," came the response. However, this command was destined to be futile. The Marines of the Knight-class Star Destroyer were stationed in a 3-story cabin below the bridge. While it was convenient for them to reach the loading and unloading platform from their position, getting to the bridge and power compartment was a different story. It required a long detour. Although the Knight-class Star Destroyer does not have a hangar, it has 3 loading and unloading platforms for transport ships to take off and land, used for daily cargo loading and troop transport. The primary role of the Marine Corps on the battleship is to board transport ships and land on the planet's surface to fight. It makes sense for them to head to the loading and unloading platform. What would Marines do on the bridge and power bay if they had no specific orders? Rebellion? In reality, even without this reasoning, the Marines on this Knight-class Star Destroyer could no longer go anywhere else. Explosions erupted outside the barracks area, accompanied by intense gunfire. The barracks and living areas, the relatively spacious parts of the battleship, had now become battlefields. 6 destroyer robots quickly rolled in, stretched their bodies, and deployed their shields. The twin blaster machine guns on their arms fired wildly, their firepower overwhelming. The clone troopers in front were so suppressed that they couldn't even raise their heads. They could only hide behind bunkers, waiting for a break in the shooting to return fire. However, as soon as they poked their heads out, the soldiers of the 4th Legion, following the destroyer robots, picked them off one by one with precise shots. In this chaotic environment of boarding and close-quarters combat, the 4th Legion did not forget to utilize the destroyer robots, a highly effective combat weapon. In the narrow confines of the battleship, the destroyer robot was nearly unstoppable. "We need more firepower. Where's the anti-tank rocket launcher?" a clone commander shouted from the rear. The low, rhythmic firing of the blaster machine gun on the destroyer robot's arm echoed through the space, sending flames licking at the battleship's internal bulkheads. "I'm here," a clone soldier responded, grabbing the rocket launcher and preparing to fire. But before he could, a soldier from the 4th Army shot him in the chest. Boom! The soldier fell, and the rocket launcher he held hit the ceiling, causing a violent explosion that engulfed the area in flames. Seizing the moment, the 4th Army soldiers launched a determined charge. They maneuvered around the destroyer robot, which could only advance slowly in combat mode. Using the universal tools on their wrists, they generated energy shields and pressed forward through the hail of bullets from the clone soldiers. These universal tools, equipped with shield modules, could create strong energy shields to aid in combat. The technology, somewhat akin to the hard light technology from Halo, was more cost-effective and widely used in Mass Effect. The 4th Civilization's most lauded technology was undoubtedly the universal tool. This versatile device could transform into a personal computer, a dagger, an axe, a hacking tool, various engineering tools, or an energy shield, depending on the installed module. Currently, the 4th Legion soldiers were using the newly developed energy shield module and a melee weapon module, which allowed the universal tool to become various melee weapons. These weapons were weightless and could even cut through thin armor. With their energy shields, the 4th Legion soldiers broke through the clone army's position and pushed them back. By the time more clone troopers arrived and established a new line of defense, the 4th Legion soldiers had already secured their ground. The destroyer robot behind them rolled forward, extended its shield, and resumed firing. Despite the increasing number of clone soldiers, over 2,000 by now, the 4th Army, with fewer than 300 soldiers, steadily pushed them back. Inside the Knight-class Star Destroyer, the clone soldiers' numerical advantage was nullified by the 4th Legion's superior combat skills. "More heavy firepower. We only have blaster rifles. How can we fight them?" another clone commander shouted. "There's an armory over there. 3 companies are guarding it, and we've sent people to retrieve more weapons," a clone trooper responded loudly. "No. We must break through their offensive quickly." The clone commander checked the orders projected inside his helmet. The captain's orders are to reinforce the power cabin and bridge immediately. But we're stuck here. If something happens on the bridge, we won't be able to support them. But we can't do anything about those destroyer robots, the clone trooper pointed out, indicating the formidable machines ahead. Their solid energy shields were impervious to ordinary blaster rifle fire. Damn it! Gather some men and rush them with EMP grenades. Their shields won't react to low-speed objects, the clone commander ordered, pointing towards the advancing robots. The commander shouted to the soldiers behind him, "Get up! I'll cover you!" He grabbed his blaster rifle, stuck his head out, and fired wildly. Several other soldiers immediately took out EMP grenades and rushed forward, using obstacles to shield their bodies. Despite their efforts, several were killed by the precise firepower of the Fourth Army soldiers. Finally, they managed to get within 50 meters. By this time, the clone commander who had been providing cover was shot in the head and lay dead behind them. The clone troopers threw their EMP grenades. The Fourth Army soldiers quickly fired a series of bullets, attempting to shoot down the grenades mid-air. Only elite warriors like those in the 4th Legion had the reaction time and confidence to attempt such a feat. Several grenades were shot down and exploded prematurely, but more than 10 grenades landed in front of the destroyer robots. Lightning flashed, and the affected destroyer robots collapsed to the ground. Charge! With most of the destroyer robots destroyed, the morale of the clone soldiers soared, and they launched a full-scale charge. However, an extremely violent explosion suddenly erupted from the other side of the battleship. Boom! The explosion was so powerful that it shook the entire battleship. The armory! The armory has been blown up, a clone trooper in charge of communications shouted. Never mind that, keep fighting! The clone soldiers, driven by adrenaline and unstable emotions, made the most radical decision to continue their assault. Meanwhile, on the bridge, the captain of the Knight-class Star Destroyer, who had been waiting for reinforcements, fell into despair. One by one, the cabins below the bridge lost contact, and the invaders were gradually making their way up. There was no doubt that an invasion force was rushing towards the bridge. In a corridor strewn with corpses, a column of 4th Legion soldiers advanced. Leading the formation was a soldier with a pink bunny doll hanging from his waist. End of chapter. Chapter 17-18, Yago Doll's Counteract. End. Captain. Captain. As the man with a pink bunny doll hanging from his waist, which starkly contrasted with his black N7 heavy combat uniform, approached, all the soldiers of the Fourth Army stood at attention and saluted him. This man was none other than Justin Reeves, the commander of the Fourth Army. Despite his peculiar hobby of collecting pink bunny dolls and watching cute animations in his downtime, Justin Reeves was the undisputed leader of the Fourth Army. This elite force, the most powerful in the Fourth Civilization, answered only to Tang Xiao. Under Tang Xiao's command, the soldiers of the Fourth Legion obeyed Justin Reeves without question. Over time, the soldiers began to refer to him as Captain, a title that, while informal, became a habit and a mark of respect within the Fourth Civilization. After the former commander, Tor Ulan, gradually stepped back to focus on training, Justin Reeves succeeded him, inheriting all of Tor Ulan's combat experience and skills. Tor Ulan had once created the Achani Sun Guards under Hago Damask II. This elite force was decimated by Alexei Garin, who attempted to assassinate Hago on the planet Sacharon. Despite their destruction, Tor Ulan continued to train a new generation of Achani Sun Guards under the guise of serving Darth Sidious. This new guard eventually became the prototype for Sheev Palpatine's Speaker's Guard, an incomplete imitation of the original Achani Sun Guard. The Speaker's Guard, clad in blue robes and full-coverage helmets, protected the Speaker year-round. After Palpatine became Emperor, the Chancellor's Guard was reorganized into the Emperor's Guard, donning bright red robes. Following Hago's death at the hands of Darth Sidious, Tor Ulan sought revenge. He joined Hago's apprentice, Tang Xiao, and trained the Fourth Legion for him. These soldiers, cultivated from embryos for purely military purposes, possessed physical fitness and combat skills that surpassed human limits, thanks to sleep-transmitted training during their growth. Under Tor Ulan's guidance, they became the most formidable force in the galaxy, even defeating the Kamino clone army at its peak. It's worth noting that Tor Ulan had no relation to the Ulan family of the Lundali Star Power Company. They merely shared a surname. As Tor Ulan aged, he trained his best warrior, Justin Reeves, as his successor, imparting all his knowledge and his deep-seated hatred for Sheev Palpatine. However, Tor Ulan soon realized that his efforts were in vain. Although Justin Reeves harbored hatred for Sheev Palpatine, this animosity stemmed from Tang Xiao's influence rather than any personal vendetta. Understanding this, Tor Ulan recognized that Tang Xiao, like Sheev Palpatine, was a Sith Lord with unparalleled control over his forces. Accepting this, Tor Ulan relinquished his hatred and his position as commander of the Fourth Army. He made one final request to Tang Xiao: to live as long as possible, and one day to build a mausoleum for Hago Damask II after Tang Xiao defeated Darth Sidious. Tor Ulan also volunteered to become an undead creature to guard Hago's tomb for eternity. Thus, the Fourth Army continued its operations quietly under the steadfast leadership of Justin Reeves. The Fourth Legion had completed its renewal, becoming more cohesive and powerful than ever before. They were now the sharpest blade in Tang Xiao's arsenal. In addition to their perfect bodies, cultivated from embryos and trained in killing skills since childhood, the Fourth Legion had begun to accept various body-strengthening modifications provided by the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group. These enhancements allowed their bodies to transcend the limits of ordinary humans. Moreover, all the soldiers of the Fourth Legion had joined the Rebirth Project. Their spare bodies, specially provided by the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group, were powerful forms grown through the control of the T-virus. In essence, the Fourth Legion had become an immortal force. Their number has remained around 20,000, but their combat effectiveness had drastically improved since their inception. The difference was like night and day. Justin Reeves walked through a corridor littered with corpses and approached the hatch at the end. As the captain of the Night-class Star Destroyer sealed all passages and hatches, several soldiers prepared cutting equipment to breach the hatch. "How's the situation in the power cabin?" Justin Reeves asked while waiting for the cut. "It went very well. The power cabin is mostly full of engineers and damage control personnel. We only needed one team to eliminate most of them, and the remaining engineers are still useful," a soldier replied. "Additionally, we've blocked the clone troopers in the barracks area. They won't be getting out. In that case, let's hurry up. This battleship cannot be our only prize," Justin Reeves said calmly. "Yes, sir." "The equipment is here." Two other soldiers arrived, carrying a massive, sharp device that resembled a huge blade. Despite its weight, which should have been around a ton, they moved quickly. "This is the laser cutting machine we removed from the assault landing craft. It can be used once it's connected to the power supply." Power supply. Justin Reeves turned to the female soldier who had previously downloaded the battleship's map. "Although all system channels are closed on the bridge, supplying energy shouldn't be a problem." "What are we waiting for?" Boom! A loud noise echoed as the door was cut open. The surrounding area instantly darkened, and a notification sound came from inside their combat uniforms. "It looks like those on the bridge have turned off the life support system," the female soldier noted. "Idiots," Justin Reeves sneered. The N7 combat suit was designed for space and weightless environment combat. It had a complete internal circulation system, electromagnetic shoes, microjet valves, and other equipment. Turning off the life support system had no effect on them. They couldn't even turn off artificial gravity. The hatches were breached one by one. Even from here, Justin Reeves could smell the fear emanating from the direction of the bridge. This scent only fueled his excitement. The laser cutting the hatch shone on the metal door, flashing a dazzling light. This was the last door. Beyond it lay the bridge command center. Brothers of the Fourth Legion. Justin Reeves displayed a ferocious and bloodthirsty smile. With a flick of his wrist, his universal tool transformed into a golden hard light shield. In his other hand, the universal tool formed a long knife. "I am a natural disaster! I am a natural disaster!" echoed the soldiers around him. They activated the shields of their universal tools and made final preparations for battle. "Hey!" Boom! Before the hatch was completely cut open, Justin Reeves charged forward. With one shoulder, he knocked open the hot, red, and half-melted hatch, shield at the ready, and rushed in. Whoosh! A dense burst of energy awaited them. The sound of gunfire from blaster rifles and pistols echoed through the bridge. The pressure generated by the explosion of a blaster beam was absorbed by the universal tool shield, but the sensation only heightened his excitement. Bang! A clone trooper was directly knocked out by Justin Reeves. The impact sent the trooper crashing into the console behind him, snapping his spine with a sickening crack. At this moment, the golden hard-light long knife, transformed from a universal tool in Justin Reeves's hand, had already sliced through the body of another clone soldier nearby. Without pausing, he charged forward, heading straight for a few makeshift bunkers constructed from chairs. With a flick of his shield, the chairs and the people behind them were thrown aside. In an instant, he sheathed his long knife and with a swift motion pulled out the N7 Valkyrie assault rifle from his back. He fired several bursts into the air, instantly killing several soldiers who had been thrown into the air. But it wasn't over. He rolled to the other side, and the shield in his other hand transformed into a long knife once more. The golden blade flashed, and 2 clone soldiers were immediately cut down. Simultaneously, the N7 Valkyrie assault rifle continued to fire. Other soldiers of the Fourth Army also stormed into the bridge like ravenous tigers. Although there were only a few dozen of them, they had no difficulty breaking into the command center, which was defended by 300 to 400 soldiers and technical personnel. The slaughter lasted less than 20 minutes, leaving the captain as the only survivor on the entire bridge. Remarkably, the Fourth Army Corps suffered no casualties, not even a single injury. They had decimated an enemy force 10 times their size. The captain was utterly terrified. He stood there, paralyzed, unsure of what to say or do. Justin Reeves walked over and gently patted the captain's shoulder, causing him to collapse to the ground. All right, let's see if there's anything useful on the loading and unloading platform. Although the Knight-class Star Destroyer doesn't carry fighter jets, it should have some cargo ships and transport ships, Justin Reeves commanded, waving his hand. Under the full-coverage transparent mask of his combat uniform, he displayed a ferocious smile. It's just a Knight-class ship. It's not enough to warrant my personal involvement. Collapse always comes swiftly. From the moment the main fleet of the 20th Army of the Galactic Republic was ready and even preparing for the next round of attacks, the number 2 star suddenly changed its direction. The planet Yago Dur was flung out by a gravitational slingshot, passing close to the Republic fleet. The fleet dispersed in an attempt to avoid the catastrophic gravitational impact caused by the planet speeding by at a distance of 50,000 kilometers. Finally, the fleet completely collapsed under the surprise attack of the Dawn Principality fleet. All of this transpired within just 5 hours. In that short span, the main fleet of the 20th Army, led by Admiral Gideon Tarkin, had completely disintegrated, unable to form any organized resistance. Even the 4 shield ships they used to stabilize their position and build a frontline supply base were destroyed. After consulting with mathematician Bakr Banak, Admiral Matt Horner, the fleet commander of the Principality of Dawn, decided to use gang hopping as the primary tactic for his decisive blow. The 4th Legion and Incholi Avengers 102 were on their way to Xiao. If everything went according to plan, the Dawn Principality fleet could indeed break into the Galactic Republic fleet directly. At that moment, Matt Horner had many options, such as launching a group of... At this distance, if the Viking fighter jets were equipped with proton torpedoes, they could easily inflict devastating damage on enemy ships. Alternatively, if the Republic fleet's formation remained intact after the initial assault, a close-range artillery battle could ensue, with a high probability of victory. In the worst-case scenario, even using a spaceship equipped with fortress-level weapons, such as super proton torpedoes, to launch a direct attack on the enemy ship was not out of the question. However, Matt Horner ultimately chose the riskiest yet most rewarding strategy, boarding the enemy ships. If successful, this maneuver would deliver a crippling blow to the enemy, both psychologically and physically. The sight of enemy forces infiltrating a battleship and slaughtering crew members cabin by cabin could easily cause the opponent's morale to collapse. Moreover, once boarded, the battleship could be immediately taken over by robots. While these robots might not be able to fully utilize the ship's combat capabilities, they could at least turn it into a stationary turret. In the end, Matt Horner succeeded. More than 10 Republic warships were boarded by his forces. Whether they were the Incholi Avengers or the Fourth Legion, those who boarded the warships were formidable warriors. In the confined spaces of the battleship interiors, where haste, EV weapons, and numerical superiority were less effective, the result was a massacre. 2 Knight-class Star Destroyers and 14 Jaeger-class battlecruisers were invaded by the army of the Principality of Dawn. After a brutal onslaught, these ships were reduced to iron coffins. But the assault didn't stop there. Matt Horner deployed more assault landing craft, and the victorious soldiers of the Fourth Legion commandeered the captured ships to attack other Republic warships. In the ensuing chaos, the Republic fleet's headquarters could no longer distinguish between their own ships and those that had been hijacked. The battlefield was a scene of utter confusion and destruction. Chapter 719, The Final Defeat. Admiral Gideon Tarkin finally conceded defeat. He knew that when the Separatist fleet advanced with the planet Yago-Dur, his failure was inevitable. In fact, their astronomers had already sealed their fate when they miscalculated the evolution pattern of this three-body galaxy. Admiral Tarkin had expended considerable effort trying to reorganize his fleet, but all attempts were in vain. In fleet battles, formation is the most critical element. If the formation cannot be maintained, then even if the Separatist fleet's strength is only 1/3 of his own, defeat is certain. This holds true regardless of any other factors. Since his fleet was scattered by the planet Yago-Dur, victory had slipped from his grasp. Tarkin, ever decisive, immediately ordered a retreat, pulling back to the forward base established in the unmanned system to regroup and strategize. Unlike Cassio Tag, who might have clung to notions of military glory, Tarkin was pragmatic. He considered the consequences of his fleet falling into the hands of the Yago-Dur system. He was acutely aware of the Galactic Republic's precarious situation. An entire expeditionary force had been decimated in the model sector, leaving over 300 capital ships lost. Coupled with his own catastrophic defeat in the Yago-Dur system, the Republic had lost nearly 500 capital ships in just 1 month. Even with the Republic's industrial capabilities, such a loss was devastating. It meant that the Republic would be unable to replenish these battleships for at least the next 6 months, leaving multiple theaters across the galaxy vulnerable. The Galactic Republic was under siege from multiple fronts. The Geth in the north, the Interstellar Banking Association, and the Fourth Group, which had ambiguous ties with the Geth, the Confederation of Independent Systems in the northeast and south, and the Principality of Dawn in the southwest. Even the Hutt space in the east had become unstable due to internal strife between the Desiligic and Basadi families. In such a scenario, losing 500 capital ships at once would cripple the Republic's future mobile fleet. Speaker Sheev Palpatine's previous bill to disband and recycle all local defense fleets had temporarily bolstered the Republic's forces with tens of thousands of warships. However, most of these ships had already been consumed in counterattacks against the Confederation of Independent Systems. The Confederation's role in the conflict was significant, even if it wasn't always in the spotlight. Long before the battle in the model sector, the main fleet of the Galactic Republic had been engaged in relentless attacks against the Confederation of Independent Systems. Under General Grievous's leadership, the Confederation's robots and fleets had held their ground on the planet Salakami, persisting to this day. Their resistance to the Republic was as formidable as that of the Principality of Dawn, if not more so. Moreover, the frigate sea tactics employed by the Principality of Dawn in the Battle of Dawn Planet had been adopted by the Galactic Republic in its counterattacks against the Confederation. This strategy had enabled the Republic, despite being short on troops, to drive out the separatist fleets from the galaxy's core. The Confederation of Independent Systems had nearly split the Republic in two during the Festival Offensive, which penetrated the Milky Way under General Grievous, and later during the Central Rim attack. However, the Republic had managed to hold its ground using a motley crew of small and medium-sized warships collected from various sources. To defend themselves against the enemy, they suddenly drove the Confederacy of Independent Systems out of the Central Ring. The price paid was, of course, enormous. The crews who controlled small and medium-sized warships to fight against the capital ships of the Confederation of Independent Systems faced unequal battles one after another in despair until they perished in space. Both sides of this war had reached their limits. Therefore, Admiral Gideon Tarkin could not afford to ruin the Galactic Republic's precious mobile fleet just because of his own whims. We can't be like the feudal civilized Donglin party of a certain blue star who talk loudly on weekdays, but when disaster strikes, they falter. You may die with a reputation, but what about the country? Admiral Gideon Tarkin made a prompt decision and issued an order to use his flagship as the last line of resistance to launch a counterattack against the Separatist fleet. His flagship was a Commander 2 class dreadnought, currently the most powerful warship in the Galactic Republic Navy. The 8,000-meter hull was enormous, and the redesigned and modified power system and energy transmission system provided powerful capabilities that the original Commander-class dreadnought did not possess. The Commander 2 class dreadnought was the only warship of the Galactic Republic that could barely compete with the Anklon-class Titan battleship. Although defeat was certain, at least until then, it could inflict significant damage on the Xuanwu Anklon-class Titan battleship. In the absence of the Titan battleship Xuanwu, the Commander 2 class dreadnought's massive body, terrifying energy levels, powerful main guns, and solid shields were unmatched by other battleships in the Dawn Principality. Even now, Admiral Matt Horner had chosen to join forces to fight, but because he had never been able to break the deflector shield of the Commander 2 class dreadnought, the assault landing craft still maneuvered around it. All battleships move closer to the flagship at any cost. Admiral Gideon Tarkin repeated over and over again in the intermittent communication, ensuring that every battleship could hear his orders. The flagship will cover you. This is our last stand. Retreat immediately. Retreat immediately. Don't be reluctant to fight. Save the last bit of firepower for the Galactic Republic Navy's mobile fleet. His order finally gave hope to some of the battleships of the Galactic Republic fleet. These battleships began to desperately shake off the enemy ships, trying to get closer to Gideon Tarkin's flagship. However, more Republic battleships fell into deep despair because of this order. Due to their positions, they could not join the flagship at all. Additionally, Gideon Tarkin's order essentially declared the battle a failure. Those battleships that could not join were effectively sentenced to death. One after another, the Galactic Republic's battleships were destroyed. It was simply unstoppable. The battleships of the Dawn Principality were not just the ace of the 4th Legion and the Incholi Avenger 102 who had jumped into the fray. Their battleships themselves also formed an absolute firepower advantage under such circumstances. Although Matt Horner did not have a Hell's Angel-class battlecruiser, the Yamato cannon of the Behemoth-class battlecruiser and the Supermatter ion cannon of the Cole-class battlecruiser posed a fatal threat to the Republic battleships. At the same time, the Particle Light Spear of the Disaster-class battlecruiser was even more powerful at such close range. The light-speed attack of the Particle Light Spear could hit almost anywhere, and at such close range, all the energy acted on the Republic battleship with almost no attenuation. Under such circumstances, the Jaeger-class battlecruiser could only withstand 2 or 3 Particle Light Spears at most before being destroyed directly. What's more, the deflection shields of these warships had now reached their limit under the ravages of the Yago-Dur planet. The spear could even penetrate shields and ships with a single shot. In contrast, the Jaeger-class battlecruiser, the main component of the Republic fleet, could only retaliate with its 8 heavy turbolaser cannons on both sides. The difference in effectiveness was evident. The final blow to the Republic's fleet came from the almost forgotten Matt Horner's flagship, the 3,175-meter-long Archon-class aircraft carrier, and the 20,000 swarm drones it carried. Once the Yago-Dur planet moved away and the gravitational turbulence in this airspace eased, the Archon-class aircraft carrier released all the swarm drones again. The fear of being dominated by these micro-drones resurfaced among all Republic Navy officers and soldiers. Now, they had lost the possibility of resistance, both psychologically and factually. The main fleet of the 20th Army of the Galactic Republic began a frantic retreat. The fortunate battleships managed to get cover from the flagship Commander 2 class dreadnought, breaking away from the battle and entering hyperspace to escape. However, most battleships did not have this opportunity. Admiral Gideon Tarkin stood on the bridge of the flagship, his face extremely solemn, counting the time for his evacuation. He planned to retreat last, but he never intended to sacrifice himself here. He considered his own life countless times more precious than those of ordinary soldiers. In this regard, Gideon Tarkin had a sense of pride and superiority. The reason he could persist now was mainly because there were enough Republic battleships present. There were more than 70 capital ships, over 130 small and medium-sized warships, more than 80 transport ships of various types, and about 20 auxiliary large ships, including 4 shield ships. With such numbers, even in chaos, it would take a while for the Dawn Principality fleet to eliminate them. The Dawn Principality's fleet obviously had no intention of provoking his Commander 2 class dreadnought and essentially allowed him to escape by default. He stood in front of the holographic star map, filled with unwillingness. Although he had foreseen failure, it was still difficult for him to accept that it happened so quickly and in such an incredible way. At this moment, Gideon Tarkin's adjutant approached and said, "General, look!" Gideon Tarkin followed his finger and saw that the radar department's sensor had discovered something new. It was a dock consisting of 3 U-shaped structures. Although simple, in the middle of this dock was a 3-body warship with a low degree of completion. Seeing this, Gideon Tarkin's pupils suddenly tightened, and he couldn't help shouting, "It's the new Xuanwu! They are indeed producing Titan battleships in the Yago-Dur system. This shipyard has been here all along." Indeed, as the second star moved violently to the other side of the galaxy, the Yago-Dur planet was also thrown out. Also thrown out were some nebula-like materials produced by the interference and tearing apart of each other during the movement of the 3 stars. After these coverings were removed, the Titan battleship dock hidden behind was finally revealed. It turns out that the dock of the Titan battleship is at that location. I remember that we scanned it before, but due to interference, there were no results, Gideon Tarkin sighed. It seems that the second ship of the Titan battleship Xuanwu is almost 40% complete. Soon, we will face 2 Xuanwu ships. Didn't the people at Kuat Power Shipyard say that although the Eclipse-class Super Star Destroyer plan has been shelved, their newly developed Executor-class Super Star Destroyer can easily hunt down the Xuanwu? The adjutant asked. You don't know about the battle in the model sector. Under such circumstances, do you still want to trust Kuat's gang? Gideon Tarkin smiled coldly. The Executor-class Super Star Destroyer? It's probably another scam to fool Chancellor Palpatine into investing in them. It's exactly the same as the last time. Gideon Tarkin took a deep look at the Titan shipyard, waved his hand, and asked, "How many of our battleships escaped?" The adjutant replied, "We have more than 20 small and medium-sized battleships, 3 Knight-class Star Destroyers, and 17 Jaeger-class battlecruisers that have managed to escape. They are currently heading to the nearby unmanned galaxy to regroup at the forward base. They are awaiting your orders and are ready to counterattack at any time." Gideon Tarkin shook his head and said, "The Galactic Republic no longer has the ability to counterattack. We need to prepare for evacuation. Let the remaining battleships fend for themselves. It's better to go to the forward base first and reorganize our remaining forces. We will wait for the warships for at most 1 day. After that, we will blow up all the space stations and various supplies at the forward base and make a full retreat." "Understood," the adjutant replied, visibly disappointed. He gave a military salute and walked away to make the necessary arrangements. August 7th, 20 BBY. Following the failed raid in the model sector, the battle in the Yago-Dur system also ended in a disastrous defeat for the Galactic Republic. In these 2 battles alone, the Galactic Republic lost nearly 400 capital ships and more than 200 small and medium-sized battleships. almost half of the Republic's existing mobile battleships were destroyed. As Gideon Tarkin had stated, the Galactic Republic had lost its ability to launch strategic attacks at this moment. In the eastern sector, another fleet of the Galactic Republic was struggling in its attack on the planet Saleucami, which was defended by General Grievous. Initially, both sides had engaged in several battles on Saleucami, and the Republic had made significant progress. However, the situation changed dramatically when the Confederation of Independent Systems introduced the second Ragnarov-class Titan battleship, the Shaman, into the battlefield. The Shaman destroyed an intact Jaeger-class battlecruiser with a single shot. Faced with this overwhelming firepower, the Republic fleet chose to retreat. Chapter 720, The End of the Galactic Republic. 1. The Yago-Dur galaxy remains in turmoil. Star number 2 continues its violent trajectory towards the other end of the galaxy, but its speed has begun to gradually decrease. Ultimately, this star failed to break free from the gravitational pull of the massive star number 1 at the galaxy's center and could not escape to other regions. The Yago-Dur planet, which had also been propelled at high speed, is now gradually moving closer to the orbit of star number 2 due to gravitational forces. Within the next month, this planet will be captured by star number 2 and become its satellite. It will then follow star number 2 into a wider orbit, rotating around star number 1. However, this process will not last long. According to current projections, star number 2 will be influenced by the gravity of star number 3 in 5 years. At that time, stars number 2 and number 3 will form a binary star system. During this period, the Yago-Dur planet will be tossed back and forth between the two stars like a pinball for at least 20 years. These 2 decades will be extremely challenging for the Jiwen people. Despite the astronomical chaos, the Jiwen people are celebrating a rare victory. The last Galactic Republic warship has surrendered in despair, leaving no remaining Republic warships in the Yago-Dur system. The Jiwen people, still hiding in their vast underground caves, are not letting the astronomical disaster dampen their spirits. They are celebrating enthusiastically in their unique way. The Jiwen people, always living on the edge of disaster with their planet at constant risk of destruction, seize every opportunity to celebrate. Their celebrations are unique, reflecting their deep love for mathematics. They celebrate by solving complex and tricky math problems. They project various mathematical problems they have designed onto small holographic displays and discuss the intricacies of these problems with each other. The technicians and soldiers from the Dawn Principality who remained on the Yago-Dur planet were bewildered by the Jiwen people's celebration methods. They politely declined the warm hospitality and returned to their quarters, feeling overwhelmed. Even the senior engineers from the Dawn Principality felt like elementary school children in front of the Jiwen people. The Jiwen, with their chitinous, skull-like heads, would gather around with enthusiasm, presenting a series of unfamiliar math problems. The sense of intellectual pressure was unmatched. Interestingly, the Jiwen people abstain from alcohol, smoking, and spices, as these substances disrupt their logical thinking. In summary, not only has the Yago-Dur planet been secured, but the entire Principality of Dawn has successfully eliminated all Galactic Republic warships. This victory is monumental. The Galactic Republic had assembled an overwhelming fleet to besiege the Principality of Dawn, opening 2 major battlefronts in the model sector and the Yago-Dur system. They deployed nearly 600 capital ships, over 400 small and medium-sized warships, various transport ships totaling more than 8,000 vessels, and over 40,000 carrier-based fighters and bombers. Despite this massive force, the Principality of Dawn managed to repel the Galactic Republic completely. Not only did they repel the attack, but they also inflicted significant losses on the Republic. The Republic paid an extremely heavy price. Less than 1/3 of the warships that participated in the battle were able to return to the rear. This is, of course, a victory, a decisive victory. When the news of this triumph spreads to every planet in the Principality of Dawn, it will ignite a carnival that spans the entire territory. Every one of the 800 billion citizens of the Principality of Dawn will cheer for this victory. They will loudly praise the heroic decision of the Duke of Dawn, Tang Xiao, who led the charge, and they will extol General Matt Horner and Volgograd Kennedy for their strategic brilliance and godlike command. Tang Xiao even declared August 7th as Victory Day for the Principality of Dawn, instituting a 3-day holiday throughout the country. From now on, this Victory Day will be a regular holiday. Tang Xiao is not begrudging this vacation because he now knows very well that the Galactic Republic is finished. After 2.5 years of struggle, the Principality of Dawn has finally secured a piece of the sky for itself, laying the groundwork for stable development for at least the next 10 years. Indeed, the Galactic Republic is finished. This failure is an unbearable burden for them. In fact, what Tang Xiao, Qi Jian, Matt Horner, and other top leaders of the Fourth Civilization didn't know was that the Galactic Republic had actually invested more troops in this attack than they had anticipated. For this assault, the Galactic Republic mobilized nearly 700 capital ships. In addition to the directions of the Model Sector and Yago-Dur, the Republic originally planned to open a third battlefield in the Eriadu system, preparing a force of 150 capital ships for this purpose. However, at that time, Tang Xiao sensed changes within the Jedi Order and judged that Order 66 was likely launched. Therefore, he instructed the Supreme Military Command to formulate an attack plan and prepare to take advantage of the situation. This led to the subsequent battle on the planet Eniko. Under the leadership of General Ling, the fleet from the planet Eriadu took the initiative to attack the planet Kira, the Republic's fleet assembly point, and then executed a brilliant defensive counterattack on the planet Eniko. Although this battle did not achieve any substantive results, it dealt a severe blow to the arrogance of the Republic fleet that was preparing to attack and damage the space stations around the planet Kira. The Republic military had to rebuild the base on the planet Kira. In the following time, the Galactic Republic, which had suffered greatly from the Xuanwu Titan battleship, had to continue increasing its troops to the planet Kira and remain on the defensive. Then, the Supreme Strategic Command of the Galactic Republic, stretched thin due to a lack of strength, agreed to Kuat Power Shipyard's gamble plan and put Kuat in charge of the battle in the Model Sector. How could Kuat Power Dockyard manage a war? As a company, it was impossible for them to have the authority to command an official Galactic Republic Navy general. This is why Cassio Taggart, a top student at the military academy who was previously a major, was promoted to Major General and then commanded the fleet at Kuat Power Shipyard. At the same time, Kuat Power Dockyard also had the authority to direct Cassio Taggart's actions. This arrangement laid the foundation for the failure of the Model Sector battle. Just imagine, if General Ling had not launched the Battle of Eniko, the Galactic Republic's attack would have primarily come from the two directions of the Eriadu system and the Yago-Dur system. The raid in the Model Sector might have occurred, but not on such a large scale. Consequently, the main ships of the Galactic Republic fleet in the Eriadu system and the Yago-Dur system might have exceeded 300 ships. Additionally, since these two directions did not require long-distance raids, they would have brought a large number of small and medium-sized warships. Cooperation and logistical supplies are not a problem. These two battlefields will become fronts for a war of attrition. While resources are being consumed in both directions, the Model Sector will also be attacked. Under such circumstances, the Model Sector might declare independence, make a separate peace with the Galactic Republic, or withdraw from the war altogether. Even if the Dawn Principality manages to win, it will be severely weakened. Facing a devastated Principality of Dawn, Darth Sidious will likely lose patience. Often, when you feel uncomfortable, remember that your opponent might be feeling even worse. Sometimes, if you take the initiative despite the odds, you might achieve a significant turnaround. For instance, General Ling almost completely abandoned the defense of the planet Eriadu and boldly sent the Titan battleship Xuanwu to the battle on the planet Eniko. That decisive move laid a solid foundation for subsequent victories. Now, the situation is different. During the Model Sector assault battle, the Galactic Republic and Kuat Power Shipyard assembled a fleet of 439 battleships, mostly Jaeger-class battlecruisers, with a few outdated Invincible-class battlecruisers. There were only 30 of the latest Knight-class star destroyers. To achieve a direct raid on the rear of the Principality of Dawn, Kuat Power Shipyard invested heavily in building a hyperspace stabilizer in an uninhabited galaxy, using stars as its energy source. They also constructed a military base consisting of hundreds of large space stations around this super facility. The construction of this military base and hyperspace stabilizer, later named the Dawn Galaxy, was so costly that even the stretched Treasury Department of the Galactic Republic could only marvel at it. However, in the failed raid, all 310 warships sent were destroyed, with none returning. Fleet Commander Cassio Tag and Adjutant Laszlo Dolit were reported killed in action. Additionally, the hyperspace stabilizer of the Dawn Galaxy was destroyed by the Principality of Dawn's ace spy James Bond, Nova Gabriel Tosh, and 2 Dark Templar warriors, Sora A and Aura Khan, along with the super hacker Super Lotus. The ensuing chaos caused heavy losses to the Dawn Galaxy. Among the more than 100 capital ships that remained in the Dawn Galaxy and were not sent to the model sector, 3 Jaeger-class ships were destroyed, and 11 Jaeger-class ships were severely damaged and had to be returned to the factory for overhaul. This resulted in a total loss of 324 battleships and more than 20,000 carrier-based aircraft. To maintain the enormous supplies needed for this massive fleet fighting in the model sector, transport ships used hyperspace stabilizers. However, when they returned, they had to risk passing through the unstable model sector channel. During this process, at least 500 transport ships were lost. Although this fleet was provided by Kuat Power Shipyard, it still consumed the strength of the Galactic Republic. The only benefit was making the finances of the Galactic Republic appear slightly better. After all, no matter how much money Kuat Power Shipyard has, it belongs to them, and the Galactic Republic cannot force them to spend it. This battle essentially required Kuat Power Shipyard to voluntarily contribute funds. The model sector raid can be considered the most tragic failure in the Galactic Republic's 25,000-plus years of existence. Then came the Battle of Yago-Dur Planet was the battleground where the 20th Army of the Republic, led by Governor Octavian Grant, faced off against the forces of the Dawn Principality. With a significant influx of battleship reinforcements, Grant invited General Gideon Tarkin to serve as the supreme commander. This strategic move also garnered the support of Wilhuff Tarkin, the current governor of the Fourth Army. With Governor Tarkin's backing, Octavian Grant secured substantial political and logistical support, enabling him to launch an offensive in the Yago-Dur system. Intelligence reports indicated that the Titan battleships of the Dawn Principality were being constructed in the Yago-Dur system, making this battle crucial. Despite General Gideon Tarkin's renowned tactical prowess and his methodical approach, which nearly overwhelmed Admiral Matt Horner, the commander-in-chief of the Dawn Principality's fleet, unforeseen complications arose. The Yago-Dur galaxy is a 3-body galaxy, and the unpredictable movement patterns of such a system caught Tarkin off guard. Admiral Matt Horner seized this singular opportunity, leading to Tarkin's complete defeat. In the Yago-Dur system battle, the Galactic Republic deployed a formidable force, 209 capital ships, over 400 small and medium-sized battleships, and 20 large auxiliary ships, including shield ships. Despite the catastrophic defeat, Admiral Gid, Eon Tarkin's adept command, allowed some ships to retreat. Among the survivors were his flagship, a Commander II class dreadnought, 54 Jaeger-class battlecruisers, 2 Knight-class star destroyers, and 57 small and medium-sized battleships. However, the Republic's newly developed Vindicator-class heavy cruisers, built by Republic Cena Systems, suffered significant losses. All 5 cruisers deployed to the Yago-Dur system were destroyed. The remaining 5, stationed at the forward base on standby, were spared due to the timely news of the main fleet's defeat. This setback prevented Republic Cena Systems from gathering crucial battlefield data, delaying the official deployment of the Defender class by 6 months, a delay with strategic implications. End of chapter. Chapter 1721, The End of the Galactic Republic, Part 2. After these 2 unprecedented defeats, the accumulated conflicts within the Galactic Republic began to emerge uncontrollably. The first major issue was the extremely negative impact on public opinion caused by the failures in battle. The failure of the Yagodur system battle was particularly significant. Most of the Galactic Republic naval officers and soldiers who returned after the defeat remained silent in accordance with confidentiality regulations. Even though there were some rumors, most people believed that the failure in the Yagodur system was due to astronomical phenomena. After all, they encountered a rare stellar event that caused the planet to change its orbit violently. The official media of the Galactic Republic also promoted this narrative, suggesting that the failure had nothing to do with the Republic Navy's capabilities, but was instead due to the peculiarities of the Trisolaran galaxy and the cunning tactics of the Separatists. Such remarks were as absurd as saying that the Seven Flooded Army's failure had nothing to do with Guan Yu and was entirely the fault of the flood. A general who doesn't understand astronomy, geographical advantages, strategic formations, or the strength of the army is mediocre. But the Galactic Republic no longer cared about such details. The senior officials and nobles of the Republic had only one concern: how to navigate this fiasco smoothly. All the media in the Galactic Republic were mobilized to arrange various interviews, records, and analyses. They portrayed the battle as a near victory, suggesting that the Republic fleet, under the command of Admiral Gideon Tarkin, had overwhelmed the Separatists. They even claimed that Tang Xiao, one of the leaders of the Separatists, cried and begged for mercy before the stars in the Yagodur system derailed, allowing him to launch a desperate counterattack. The media exaggerated the size of the galaxy and the smallness of the planets, suggesting that the chance of a planet hitting the Republic's fleet was 1 in a billion. However, they ignored the fact that the Republic fleet was deployed near the Yagodur planet, making it a prime target if the planet's orbit changed. Despite these fabrications, the narrative was that the Separatists were severely beaten before the planet's orbit changed, and the chance of this orbit change was purely accidental. In the end, the Republic Navy even prepared to hold a medal ceremony to honor the supposed heroes of the battle. Admiral Gideon Tarkin and 20th Army Governor Octavian Grant were promoted as war heroes. However, the awarding ceremony was farcical. Admiral Tarkin did not attend, and Governor Grant stated that he would stick to his post and not come. Speaker of the Republic, Sheev Palpatine, also refused to participate in this clown-like event. At the medal ceremony, a few naval officers were present, but the event was a clear indication of the Republic's desperate attempt to salvage its reputation amidst growing internal conflicts and public discontent. Soldiers who had escaped from the front line of Yagodur and returned in disgrace were temporarily invited to take the stage and receive medals. As the saying goes, when a country is about to perish, there must be monsters, and sometimes these monsters don't actually have to be literal monsters. But after so much trouble, if there is one reason that can be justified for the fiasco of the Yagodur system, then the raid in the model sector was a complete disaster. No matter from which angle you look at it, it's a disaster, because this miserable failure could not be hidden from everyone's eyes almost from the beginning. As a company, Quat Power Shipyard naturally does not have as strict a system as the Galactic Republic's military, so it was impossible for them to hide the secret of this defeat from the beginning. Although none of the 324 battleships sent to the front line of the model sector came back, it does not mean that no one from the model sector returned. After all, in previous battles, the staff on the transport ships who came back to deliver supplies, and some wounded soldiers who were sent to the rear when the traffic was still smooth. These people naturally knew the situation on the front line very well. As a result, news about the front line of the model sector spread like wildfire and began to spread at an extremely fast speed. What's even more terrible is that in order to build the huge military base in the Dawn Galaxy, Quat Power Shipyard not only used an extremely large amount of funds and materials, but also a huge amount of manpower. The number of workers involved in the construction of the Dawn Galaxy reached millions, and the families of these workers were also taken to the Dawn Galaxy. In this way, the number of people involved in the construction was close to tens of millions. At the beginning, Quat Power Shipyard still had strong control capabilities, so the Dawn Galaxy was still kept secret at that time. But later, As the front line continued to fail, people in the Dawn Galaxy surged, and everyone was in danger, so more and more people wanted to plan a way out. As a result, a hole gradually opened up, and this hole got bigger and bigger. In the end, a lot of news from the Dawn Galaxy was actually leaked to the outside. The reason why Nova and the others were able to contact the Dark Broker at that time was actually due to this stage, and then they could take advantage of it. At that time, the two top leaders of the Quat Power Shipyard responsible for this battle, Onana Quat and Leela Blissex, had begun constant internal fighting, and their minds were not at all on the battlefield. In other words, in their opinion, it didn't matter what happened in the model sector. What really mattered was the supergiant Quat Power Dockyard. So they thought that since the battle had started anyway, let's just leak the secrets. Everyone knew that they were going to attack the model sector, and if they wanted to solve the problem of leaks, they would have to strengthen management, and strengthening management might cause those staff who were already under great pressure to collapse faster. So they chose to ignore it. It would have been fine if this battle was won, but what they were waiting for was the news that the expeditionary force suffered a disastrous defeat and the entire fleet was annihilated. Then the news spread throughout the entire galaxy in less than 3 days. Now everyone knew that the Galactic Republic's expedition raided the model sector, resulting in a loss of troops, and not a single one of more than 300 capital ships came back. That's right. Those rumors were so accurate that even the losses were clearly known. Now that things have happened, it was no longer possible to hide it. Therefore, in desperation, the Galactic Republic chose the method that could protect themselves to the greatest extent, passing the blame. But blame shifting is also an art. First of all, you can't throw the blame around carelessly. If it falls on someone you can't afford to offend, you won't know who will take the blame. Therefore, the next steps had to be carefully calculated. The wave of operations by the Galactic Republic can be described as chaotic. The first to bear the brunt was Laszlo Dolit, the fleet's frontline deputy commander. Surprisingly, it wasn't the commander-in-chief, Cassio Tag, who took the initial hit. Why, you ask? The answer lies with the influential Tag family, who ensured Cassio Tag wasn't the first to face the consequences. The official reason given was that Laszlo Dolit, a veteran of the Stark hyperspace war, was recruited to compensate for Cassio Tag's lack of combat experience. Analysts and military experts quickly found reasons to support this decision. Cassio Tag, a top student at the military academy, had solid theoretical knowledge. However, after graduation, he primarily engaged in anti-pirate operations and lacked experience in large-scale fleet maneuvers. Therefore, Laszlo Dolit's opinions were crucial during combat. Our poor Cassio, respecting his elders and considering Laszlo Dolit's suggestions, made a critical mistake, leading to the failure of frontline operations. Even after the frontline battle failed, Cassio Tag, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempted to reverse the defeat and uphold the Republic Navy's tradition and glory by raiding Dawn Planet. It's important to note that after over 1,000 years of peace, the Republic Navy had dismantled all weapons with a caliber larger than 10 millimeters, leading to traditional problems. The raid on Dawn Planet, which seemed reckless and irresponsible to a normal person, was promoted by the Republic as a move to maintain the Navy's tradition and glory. Faced with Cassio Tag's so-called heroic move, Laszlo Dolit actually gave up. Not only that, he used his seniority to leave more than half of the fleet behind, forcing Cassio Tag to lead a smaller fleet to raid Dawn Planet. If Laszlo Dolit had known better, he would have realized that his efforts to defend the rear and suppress the separatist fleet on Anaji were being distorted. If he had, perhaps even a titanium alloy coffin wouldn't have been enough to contain his frustration. Cassio Tag bravely led his fleet in a desperate raid against the separatist leader Tang Xiao, who was beaten until he cried and begged for mercy. However, due to insufficient strength, Cassio Tag's fleet eventually reached its limit. Even at the end, he was still shouting, "Give me another battleship, and I can penetrate the armor of Tang Xiao's ship." This statement seemed eerily familiar, reminiscent of a previous battle on Yagodur, where Tang Xiao had similarly cried and begged for mercy. In the end, the biggest culprit, Laszlo Dolit, couldn't escape blame. Surprisingly, the second most responsible person wasn't Tag either. It was the late leader of the former Kuat Power shipyard, Onana Kuat, yes, deceased. 3 days after Onana Kuat was abandoned in her temporary residence, Little Kuat, who had regained control of the Kuat Power dockyard and became the new Kuat of Kuat, sent people to bring her back. However, they found that Onana Kuat had hanged herself alone in the dark mansion. Onana Kuat wasn't entirely without intelligence. She understood that she was at the end of her rope, and all the blame would be placed on her, leading to her losing everything. Additionally, she was betrayed by her once loyal servant, who left her alone in the mansion to starve and turned off all the lights, leaving her to tremble in the darkness. Given these circumstances, it's not surprising that Onana Kuat, already on the verge of a mental breakdown, chose to commit suicide. A person who has lost power will undoubtedly become the scapegoat. For her own benefit, Onana Court bribed numerous officials and even some military personnel, insisting on participating in this combat operation. She also persuaded Quarter Power Dockyard to write a blank check, claiming that all battleships would be funded by them. However, her promise was never fulfilled. All battleships were still provided by the Galactic Republic Navy, quietly adding another large deficit to their budget. This entire scheme was a transaction between the new Kuat of Kuat, Little Kuat, and Dun Wessex. The Kuat Power shipyard turned a blind eye, accepted the money, and pretended nothing had happened. All expenses for the campaign were ultimately funded by the Republic Navy. With Onana Court's behind-the-scenes intervention, this ill-fated expedition began. As a result, Tag was deceived by this manipulative woman and became the first victim in this corrupt endeavor. The treatment of Onana Court was thorough. All those bribed by her, manipulated by her, and who facilitated this expedition were arrested and tried. Onana Court's associates were all eliminated, and the Republic's military decided who she had bribed and manipulated. Essentially, this was a purge aimed at eliminating dissidents. During this purge, several individuals were naturally thrown under the bus. When the number of scapegoats reached double digits, it was the turn of the expedition fleet commander, Tag. Despite his intelligence and power, and his previous victory over the separatist leader Tang Xiao, he was still young and inexperienced. He was led astray by several veteran criminals and made mistakes typical of youth. As a result, Tag's poor performance in this battle was criticized. However, he still made an indispensable contribution by reaching the doorstep of Dawn Planet. For this, he should be awarded the title of General. Chapter 1722, The End of the Galactic Republic 3. Despite the two disastrous defeats in the Model Sector assault and the Yago Dur battle, and the subsequent emergency public relations efforts that made it seem as though the senior officials of the Galactic Republic had weathered the crisis as usual, the reality was far different. The Battle of Yago Dur was blamed on a sudden astronomical phenomenon, and in the raid battle of the Model Sector, although the initial blame fell on Laszlo Dolit, the true responsibility for the defeat was placed on Quart Powerboat Yard. On the surface, it appeared that these events had little to do with the Galactic Republic itself, but this was far from the truth. The defeats in these two battles sparked a wave of defeatism within the Republic Parliament. Many began to believe that the Galactic Republic could no longer emerge as the victor in this war. It seemed that the conflict would drag on indefinitely, and in the process, the Republic might be overwhelmed. However, there were others who believed that the war had escalated artificially. They argued that the conflict had moved beyond the nature of a civil war and had become a struggle to destroy the other side's country and species. This group, led by Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, called for a de-escalation of the war and urged both sides to return to the negotiating table to discuss the future of the galaxy while reflecting on the serious consequences of the conflict. It is important to note that Bail Organa and Mon Mothma's ideas differed from those of the defeatist congressmen. Their loyalty and belief in the Republic were unwavering, but they were also keenly aware of signs of human intervention in the war. They recognized that if the war continued, it would lead to even more severe consequences. Thus, they advocated for reopening the negotiation process. more and more congressmen began to rally around Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, wary of the current parliament's abnormal trends. As the war progressed, more power was concentrated in the hands of Sheev Palpatine, starting with the Emergency Judgment Power and later the Military Creation Act. Many bills and affairs of the Republic, both large and small, began to bypass the Parliament. In many cases, execution of these bills had already begun before they were even submitted for discussion. Palpatine would only inform the Parliament of the results during meetings. Some of Palpatine's policies were also deeply concerning. For instance, he strengthened the voting power of MPs from the core and inner ring planets, while weakening the voting power of MPs from the middle and outer ring planets. As a result, planets in the central and outer star regions had fewer opportunities to fight for their rights and interests in the Parliament. Members from these regions felt increasingly powerless as they watched stringent laws being passed, placing heavier burdens on their planets. This was no longer the era before Palpatine's rise to power, when the central and outer rim sectors could unite to form the Rim faction and wield significant influence. The current parliament of the Galactic Republic had become a place where the strong preyed on the weak and powerful planets carved up the galaxy's resources. The power of the Republic was concentrating in the core and inner ring planets, and with the support of MPs from these sectors, Palpatine's influence in the Parliament continued to grow. During the course of the war, Palpatine also gathered loyal members to form a group called the Loyalist Council, which initially, after the collapse of the Ring faction, the Loyalist Council gained increasing influence in Parliament. This led to the establishment of the Commission for the Protection of the Republic, COMPOR. The scope of COMPOR extends beyond its members, encompassing a broad organization that covers almost the entire Galactic Republic. This organization advocates for Palpatine's wise leadership, builds momentum for the war, and travels among major planets to garner support for Palpatine and the Galactic Republic. Over the past year, the Republic Protection Committee has become more active, organizing marches and speeches on many planets. Their efforts have significantly boosted Palpatine's support, making it nearly unshakable. Recently, a new organization has emerged from COMPOR, the Sub-Adult Group of the Republic, or SAG Group. This group consists entirely of minors who, through targeted brainwashing and indoctrination, exhibit almost fanatical loyalty to Sheev Palpatine. Their enthusiasm for Palpatine surpasses even that of their parents and elders, and sometimes even the Galactic Republic itself. Since its establishment, the Republic Youth League has been very active, often organizing public events such as speech contests. To show his support, Sheev Palpatine frequently attends these events. For instance, at the finals of a Republic Youth League speech contest, Palpatine made a surprise appearance, personally awarding a medal to the stunned champion and appointing him as a reserve cadre of the Republic's propaganda department. The scene was so heated that it nearly got out of control. From the perspective of the Principality of Dawn, one might assume that the Galactic Republic is in a state of gloom and doom. However, this is far from the truth. While there is some gloom, it is mostly confined to Parliament. The true ruling core of the Republic, the planets in the inner ring and core circle, remain full of joy. Despite being surrounded by enemies, no threat can reach the inner and core circles. The Loyalist Committee operates within the Parliament, the Republic Protection Committee acts in society, and the Republic Youth League mobilizes the youth. The entire Galactic Republic's support for Speaker Sheev Palpatine has reached a fanatical level. However, there is a concerning trend. Both the Republic Protection Committee and the Republic Youth League seem to consist predominantly of humans. Given that humans, descendants of philosophers, have a numerical advantage in the core circle and inner ring, while most of the middle and outer ring star areas are inhabited by non-human races, this concentration of power in the core circle and inner ring is a very dangerous signal. Chapter 1723, The End of the Galactic Republic, 4. This is sensational nonsense, a baseless slander against us with ulterior motives. Cruya Vandron, Sheev Palpatine's advisor, exclaimed angrily during a media interview, "Those gathered here today are the best members of the Youth League of the Republic. They represent the finest generation of the Republic and its future. Your doubts are the biggest blow to these outstanding young people. Vandron continued loudly. Of course, the Youth League of the Republic cannot recruit only human members. This is just a coincidence. The first application received by the Youth League of the Republic and the first member recruited happened to be a human. Naturally, the Youth League will recruit members of non-human races, and we have indeed received many applications from non-human races. So, have non-human races joined in? The reporter asked persistently. All applications are under review. If someone's application is rejected, then they should reflect on their own reasons. The Youth League of the Republic represents the future of the Republic, and only the best young people in the Republic can join. Vandron's answer was ambiguous. With a click, the holographic projection was turned off. Chi Ikwe Papanoida, a congressman from the planet Pantora, expressed his concern. Things can't continue like this. Anti-inhumanism, totalitarianism, Palpatine is pushing the Galactic Republic in an extremely dangerous direction. There's no doubt about that, but I'm very concerned that there's nothing we can do now. Councillor Banabrimu sighed. Our previous impeachment action against Palpatine did not have any impact on him. Congressman Mon Mothma added, the power of the Congress has become smaller and smaller, and there are fewer and fewer things we can do. Now Palpatine has almost lost all control. Bail Organa remained silent. He looked at the congressmen who were discussing plans in vain, and his heart felt extremely cold. They had been fighting against Palpatine relentlessly since the beginning of the war. Although there were no aircraft, cannons, or tanks and warships in this battle, the verbal confrontations were still full of various conspiracies, struggles, games, and compromises. But their struggle had little chance of winning from the beginning. Ever since Palpatine received emergency ruling powers, he had been invincible. The remaining time was just the last struggle of these members of Congress. Bail Organa sighed and said, Palpatine still cares about his support and public opinion. Otherwise, he would not let the Republic Protection Committee and the Republic Youth League do so many things to improve his own popularity. He wants to make himself the dictator of the Galactic Republic, and he is planning to retain the power given to him by the Parliament forever, the grumpy Congressman Tang Xiao roared. We must take action. Let's sign the letter, Bail Organa suggested. A joint petition? No, we should start the impeachment process again. Tang Xiao said loudly. It's useless. The impeachment process has no effect except irritating Palpatine. Instead, it will only give him enough excuses to arrest us. Banabrimu shook her head. The last time we initiated the impeachment process, I said that, to a certain extent, we were breaking the law. We exercised the legitimate rights of the Parliament to launch impeachment. What kind of law did we violate? Tang Xiao roared. Congressman Bana is right. Palpatine has the power of emergency decision-making. Because in everyone's eyes, he is leading the Galactic Republic to fight against the Separatists. If we initiate impeachment at this time, he can completely remove the illegal hat off, Mon Mothma explained. Is it useful to submit a joint letter? Are we just going to lower our heads and beg him? Tang Xiao said unwillingly. That's right, just beg him. This is the only way we can. Bail Organa glanced at the faces of everyone around him and said slowly, behind each of us there is As citizens of Var, Ios planets, we cannot place our emotions above the interests of our worlds and the safety of our people. This is our fundamental principle as parliamentarians. Everyone lowered their heads in agreement. Let's jointly submit a letter. It's a difficult decision, but I hope Palpatine can reconsider, Bail Organa said. If we can garner the support of more congressmen, the weight of this letter will be significant enough that Palpatine cannot ignore it. I agree. Let's proceed, Mon Mothma added. August 15th, 20 BBY. 1 week after the failure of the Battle of Yago Dur, more than 2,000 members, led by principled individuals such as Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, jointly signed an initiative and submitted it to Speaker Palpatine's desk. This proposal became known as the Petition of 2000. In this proposal, the congressmen conducted an in-depth analysis of the current state of the Galactic Republic and the ongoing harm caused by the war. They argued that although the war was currently at a stalemate, it had forced the separatist forces to retreat significantly. The separatists now controlled only their core areas, and their initial arrogance had been severely diminished. The war had achieved some phased results. However, the war had also led to numerous internal conflicts within the Galactic Republic, and its finances were on the verge of collapse. Under such circumstances, launching further attacks on the planets with the strongest separatist forces could result in tragedies similar to the Model Sector raid war. Therefore, the lawmakers believed it was time to de-escalate the war and restore normalcy to the war-torn galaxy. This was not about compromising with separatism, but about taking time to recuperate and address the issues the Republic had exposed during the war. The congressmen expressed in the initiative that they hoped Speaker Palpatine would fulfill his promise made when he was granted emergency ruling powers at the beginning of the war. They urged him to return power to the Congress so that both sides could discuss reforms and make the Republic's administration more efficient. Additionally, the proposal subtly suggested that some battles had failed due to a lack of effective oversight. For instance, the Battle of Model Sector had too many questionable aspects. If there had been parliamentary deliberation and supervision, such hasty offensives might have been prevented. This petition of 2000 was sincere and humble, almost pleading with Palpatine. It represented the last effort for democracy by those members of the Republic's parliament who still held on to hopes for a democratic republic. They had no other choice. When this letter, signed by over 2,000 people, was delivered to Speaker Sheev Palpatine, it carried enough weight that he could not easily ignore it. However, upon reading the proposal, Palpatine's deep eyes flared with anger. End of chapter. Chapter 1724, The End of the Galactic Republic 5. Written by 2,000 people, this initiative is very formal, and it is also a rare paper document, handwritten. Behind the long document is a signature that spans 5 pages. At a quick glance, you can see the names of congressmen, including Bon Abrim, Mon Mothma, and Fang Za, who are also Palpatine's old enemies. Flames of anger ignited in Sheev Palpatine's eyes. He calmly pressed the button on the table and said, "There will be an emergency meeting tomorrow." "Emergency meeting? Your schedule tomorrow is not." The respectful voice of Deputy Speaker Mas Ameda came from the communication line. "I said, call an emergency meeting." Sheev Palpatine's voice was still calm, but behind that voice there was an aura of chilling terror. Yes, I will arrange it immediately." Mas Ameda's voice trembled. "That's right, arrange it immediately. Hey. Palpatine let out a distorted laugh. After all, it is a proposal signed by more than 2,000 people. This is a big matter and must be resolved as soon as possible. When the news was conveyed that Speaker Sheev Palpatine would convene an emergency plenary meeting of the Parliament tomorrow, everyone, including Bail Organa, Representative Mon Mothma, and others, understood that this was their final decision. It was a decisive battle. Decisive battle? Maybe that's not the right word. Perhaps struggle is a more appropriate description, because these congressmen have reached the end of their rope. Either they give up their positions, or they fight to the end in despair. The worried Bail Organa left his office and returned to his private residence. Today he planned to rest early so that he could face the powerful Sheev Palpatine in a better posture tomorrow. However, just as he walked into the mansion, he suddenly saw a person sitting in the corner of the living room, an old man with white beard and hair and an aging face. Bail Organa was no longer unfamiliar with this face. It was the former speaker, Finis Valorum. Bail Organa calmed his shocked mood instantly. He turned around, closed the door, and turned on the anti-monitoring system. First, he went to the refrigerator and poured 2 glasses of juice, brought them to Finis Valorum, handed him a glass, and then sat down in front of the old former speaker. "I'm sorry for the sudden visit like this, Councillor Organa," Finis Valorum said. "The streets are now full of reconnaissance drones, and Palpatine's spies are everywhere. Every move we make is under his supervision. Fortunately, I still know some people who can make a difference." Bail Organa nodded solemnly. "If that's the case, you took a huge risk to come to see me in private. You must have something important to explain to me, right?" Finis Valorum nodded and said, "It is impossible for Palpatine to give up the power in his hands. Even the war itself has many unknown shady secrets. But based on some of the information I have, judging from the situation, at least the outbreak of this war has something to do with Palpatine." "It's too late to say this now," Bail Organa shook his head. "No matter what happens in this war, it is no longer important because we can no longer affect his power through this." "But this is important," Finis Valorum insisted, "because only by understanding this, you will understand that no matter what you do, he will never give up his power. Your views on Palpatine are still too naive. That petition will only make him crazier." "This is the only thing we can do," Bail Organa said. "We cannot sit back and watch Palpatine trample the democracy of the Galactic Republic under his feet. Even if he continues to act in this perverse way, perhaps the very foundation of the entire Galactic Republic will be shaken." "The only thing you did has no other purpose than making the situation worse," Finis Valorum sighed. "Fortunately, I still have some old acquaintances, so before the petition was sent out, I took the necessary precautions." Finis Valorum placed an untouched cup on the coffee table, stood up, and said, slightly tiredly, "You are very important, Senator Organa. I don't want you to get involved in this futile operation. This is our belief and persistence. If Senator Mothma knew that my name had been removed from the proposal, what would they think? Where is the belief we insist on?" Bail Organa snapped. "At least survive first," Finis Valorum replied. "At tomorrow's meeting, Palpatine will destroy you all. No, he will destroy everyone who stands in his way to power, no matter who they are." With that, he opened the door and walked out. Bail Organa noticed that a shielding force field had been set up outside the door to ensure that Valorum's visit would not be seen by anyone. Watching Valorum's old back, Bail Organa's expression grew extremely complicated. Feeling lost, he went to the bathroom, turned down the temperature, and let the cold water splash all over his body. In that shuddering cold, Bail Organa thought. The next day, an emergency meeting of the entire Parliament, convened by an executive order personally issued by the Speaker of the Republic, Sheev Palpatine, was held as scheduled. No one dared to disobey Palpatine's instructions. No matter what they were doing, all the council members immediately stopped their activities and hurried back, even from the other side of the galaxy. For a time, there was a bustling scene in front of the Galaxy Parliament building. The congressmen hurried to the venue with their delegations and advisory groups, fearing they would be even a second late. Bail Organa arrived at the entrance of the venue and saw Mon Mothma, Bana Braham, and others already waiting. Seeing their firm gazes, Bail Organa's heart trembled a little, knowing that his name was no longer in the proposal. However, he still walked over and said, "Today's situation may be very difficult, and Palpatine's madness may exceed all of our imaginations. Before the meeting begins, I suggest that we should prepare as soon as possible." Although Mon Mothma and the others were a little surprised by Bail Organa's sudden statement, out of trust in him, they nodded and began to connect to their communication devices to contact some of their supporters.